I normally try to think of a semi-interesting little opening monologue thing, but I'm not going to today because I'm joined by Tony Reed, who assures me he is the Tony Reed of the very good YouTube series called Why Do People Laugh at... no, that's a different guy.
No, it's a different guy.
It is
how creationism taught me real
science. Yes. Yeah, I love that stuff. You know, it's a lot of people like to do their ponage videos, and then when I watch your stuff, it sort of opens like from the perspective of a mythical creature, the open-minded creationist. And I guess I shouldn't say mythical creature, because I take it you were one of those people that you know, had a position and believed it, and then actually sought out evidence and you know, really thought about the stuff. So I guess I shouldn't say it's a mythical creature. I just don't encounter enough of them, to be honest with you. But it seems like every episode starts with, from the viewpoint of a creationist who's genuinely interested in learning the truth of God's creation, and then comes to learn that part of God's creation is that people like you know, Ken Ham and Carl Baugh are money-grubbing liars.
Well, I don't blatantly say that, but that is most likely a fact. But to clear up something, though, I actually wasn't a creationist. What happened is, studying creationist claims is how I got to know a lot more about science. I really do credit, strangely enough, Kent Hovind with that. I never would have even had this show if I hadn't spent the time fact checking everything he put up in one of his videos. And once I found how lacking all of those arguments were, although I already had a suspicion that evolution was pretty solid science, it just clinched it for me. And so led to the show eventually.
Yeah, well, it's interesting. And actually, it sort of pipes into a question that I've always wanted to ask you. And first, I'm going to segue by saying, yeah, I know what you mean about how, I mean, culturally, where I'm from, you generally don't really get into people. Oh, you believe this? Okay, that's great. Your religious beliefs, that's fine. You know, you believe that prayer is helpful. That's good for you. Good for you. You know, and you generally don't really challenge them. And it's actually been the upsurge in creationist YouTube videos from 10 years ago that I think really got people questioning a lot of their bits of understanding of the universe, right? That you know, oh, did you catch it? Cat is after something. And I mentioned, why do people laugh at creationists? I mean, that was sort of my entry point into really looking into this stuff. And we sort of have to thank someone who I believe is our fellow countryman, Venom Fang X, for resharing a lot of Kent Hovind stuff verbatim, just sitting there reading the slides off of a DVD, and getting people, you know, Thunderfoot notably, looking at this stuff and just saying, like, boy, these Christians, this particular subset of people who call themselves Christians, believe some pretty crazy stuff. And I think it opened the door to a lot of people to start thinking about, like, you know, how deep does the crazy well go? And I think there were a lot of people. So what was you? So you're Canadian, right?
No, I'm actually I'm from San Diego, California, initially.
Is that close to Canada?
Not at all.
Not at all. I thought you were Canadian.
No. Nope.
Oh, how did I get that impression? Am I mixing you up with somebody else?
You might be mixing me up with Apologia.
No, yeah, I know. He's Canadian for sure. And yeah, his style is very, very different. I just, for some reason, in one of your earlier videos, I got the impression that you were in either Ontario or Manitoba. Oh.
Huh.
Well, then I guess Venom Fang X. I mean, you know Venom Fang X. He's not from your land, and there's no shame in coming from a country where he's not from. I will say, but you know the guy, right?
Yeah, of course. Venom Fang X. I actually did a response to one of his videos, and I think 2 days after I did the response, YouTube changed the entire structure, and there were no more response videos.
You can't attach.
So, what's that?
You can't attach video responses. Yeah, there was that sudden change. Yeah.
Yeah, and that, I guess at the time they were trying to make it a video social media, and I guess they've rescinded that idea. But he did this. I've actually been following him for a long time too, over a decade. He's not doing much these days, but for a while there, he was really ruffling some feathers and getting under people's skin.
Yeah, yeah. Well, he's, it's funny because, just looking back over a decade, it's interesting how many creationist apologists, they kind of go one way or the other. They generally, let's call them quote unquote the smarter ones, tend to recognize the wisdom and the advice to kick the dust from your feet and move on. And there are a lot of them. I mean, I remember back in that day, you had, Venom Fang X and Gear Up and Shock of God and the real sort of hard-nosed, hardcore apologists that realized they were just beating their head against a wall to try to argue out the science on YouTube. So they went into other forms of apologetics, or they just went to other venues, right? You don't get the kind of challenge in other venues that you do when you try to present your pseudoscience on YouTube.
Yeah, I guess not. I mean, if you go to a presentation or you do a presentation to a group of people that already agree with you, you don't tend to get a lot of pushback. And there's no shortage of venues for creationists to present in.
Exactly, yeah. Although I gotta say, Tony, I find this really weird because there's a question for more than a year I've wanted to ask you, and now I realize how misguided it is, because I sometimes when I bump into a Canadian creationist or especially a Canadian who's an ex-creationist, I want to ask them, how, living within Canada, did you end up being a young Earth creationist? And I've really wanted to ask you this, and it turns out you're neither Canadian nor a young Earth creationist.
That is correct.
Okay, well.
So that actually kind of answers the question, though, doesn't it?
Yeah. Well, like I said, how do you? Well, San Diego, I guess, is not exactly a hotbed of Bible thumping young Earth creationism. Boy.
It is when you're in college. All throughout college, I was bombarded on campus by different Christian groups. I even tried to join one or two of them, and then just, I'm sorry, the parties were lame.
That's an interesting phenomenon, is the college campus, sandwich board wearing, bullhorn toting apologist. There's so many of these people who they have colleges or universities in their town, and they think, wow, this is a great opportunity. This institution being right here, it's a great opportunity. Do they apply or register, sign up for classes, or do the community outreach programs that they have that you don't need to have a stellar transcript to get started on? Nope. They just go out there with their bullhorn and their sandwich board, and they just start shouting at people. I find that a very strange phenomenon.
It's not just creationism, though. I mean, any kind of any cause that you might have on campus, there is an open forum to express yourself in it. I hear a lot in the news today that there's certain ideas that are being suppressed, and that could be discussed at some other time. But it is an interesting time when you go from high school, where you're pretty much, you're sort of you're reserved in expressing your opinions. You're sort of going with a crowd, where in college you're encouraged to speak up, and you see other people doing it, and it's very easy to say, I want to join in that too. So if you want to spread the gospel, your very first practice at just being a preacher can be right there on campus, and it doesn't cost you anything. You just put up a sandwich board and just start shouting.
Yeah, it's a phenomenon I'm familiar with only through YouTube. I'll say our campuses are open spaces for public speech. It's really, really hard to get yourself arrested for trespass. I mean, universities are all private property, and a lot of people think, well, there's sidewalks and stores and stuff, so obviously it must be sort of an extension of the city. And of course, it's not. There is a point where it's more like a shopping mall, right? Where once you get in onto the property, you're on private property. But it's really, really difficult to get yourself arrested for trespass on a university campus. So a lot of them, and of course, there's a lot of foot traffic because people are walking from one building to another. So there is a lot of these little bits of free speech, but we don't have the same vigorous, or especially the angry, shouty types, because there's a very different interpretation of what free speech is, or what we call the reasonable limits to free speech between the U.S. and Canada, where I think a lot of people think that if there's any limitations to free speech, then you don't really have free speech. Whereas Canadians take more of a notion and I'm going to borrow the language from the Charter of Rights and Freedoms, but there's reasonable limits to free speech, and that includes things like you can't be super loud. Like, okay, if you want to stand in your soapbox and you want to make your points, then go ahead and do that. But you know what? If you're out there with a bullhorn and other people can't have normal conversations, we just prefer you don't do that. So we generally don't get the same sort of shouty, pushy, shovey things that I love watching on YouTube.
Yeah, well, based on what you just said, it's almost I don't want to use this cliche, but it seems that I guess the stereotype is correct. Canadians are rather polite. And it's a great thing. I actually love that about your country, besides the fact that it's just a beautiful place.
Yeah, we do. I mean, there are some things that when you go, yeah, I mean, people should have their freedom, but it's like the debate that went on in your country incredibly briefly here over whether or not there's free speech at someone else's funeral. You know, can I just interrupt your funeral procession, or stand outside the church or the whatever funeral home or whatever service is being offered, and just be so loud that people can't hear what's going on with their own service. And we put a stop to that pretty quickly. That's seen, it's courtesy, right? You got your free speech, but you can't interrupt other people just trying to go about their day. So it's kind of gone like that.
That's outrageous. Yeah, we still have the Westboro Baptist Church picketing soldiers' funerals, and I guess we do value not just our right to free speech, but our right to abuse it.
Yeah. Well, some of them you have them. Some of them are actually not permitted to travel to Canada. I understand that they're under some restriction. That we have a little more rights of free speech for people that are within the borders versus travelers, and I think there's also a fairly famous case a while ago. There's an American. Is it Wild Bill for America? No, I'm mixing with somebody else. There's an American cowboy hat wearing, Bible swinging apologist there that tried to come to Canada for some convention that was happening in Calgary, and he was turned away at the border. And it is just like all the free speech nutters just went absolutely crazy over it, even though they don't exactly know the whole story. But rather than venture into that, I got to say I'm slightly surprised it's just the two of us in here. For people who are watching, I'm more than a little hesitant to put the link out in the live chat as I usually do. You sort of keep doing that until you get your first porn bombing, and then you're like, oh, okay, fine, I guess I won't do that anymore. So just message me on the Hangouts IM feature. Sometimes you need to send the first message inviting to join a conversation. Make sure when if you still need to add me, that you're looking for Hog Tie Champ, is 2 words, not Hog Tie Champ Jr. Although I probably could pop that one open just in case somebody sent a message to the wrong account. But you're all welcome to join. The crazy thing that we all just watched was Aron Ra had a debate. It was on Jackson Wheat's channel, and the title of it was something like Aron Ra debates Mr. Intelligent Design. And I will say, being Sunday, I slept in a little bit, and I got up and I had breakfast for the kids and etc. And I'll see what's going on. And I opened the thing, and what the hell? I'm listening to Aron try to come to grips with Edgar, Mr. Intelligent Design, explain the egg dropping experiment. And I had a moment where I was like, I must still be asleep. Like I must have just dreamt this whole thing about getting up and getting breakfast for the kids, because this crazy thing is happening. Like, how did this happen? But it went about as well as you guess. Go ahead, Tony.
I've run into him a few times on other channels, and especially there's a debate that I watched, right after one of the Kent Hovind debates. I believe it was with Bill Ludlow, and it was he presented his theory to me, and still, well, no, he didn't present his theory. He claimed to be presenting his theory to me, but it never went anywhere, and I knew that was going to happen this time. That's why I put a prediction at the beginning, saying I predict in 1 hour you still won't know what his theory is, and I still don't know what his theory is.
Oh yeah.
I don't know about you.
I've heard it multiple times. I have not availed myself of any opportunity. I mean, Steve McRae is very, very generous with you know, asking me to join. If, oh, there's somebody interesting to talk to, you know, Hogtie, have you got time for this? And I just, and of course, you know, Edgar himself is very, very generous about, yeah, I want to talk to people about this. And I think he's a good conversationalist in the sense that he doesn't go, we have an expression in community, he doesn't go full G-man when something's not going right for him. He just keeps plugging away at it. But I find, while people will remark that I'm patient in conversations that aren't necessarily going well, I don't do very well in conversations where I just can't cut through the gibberish. So an illustration of that, again, I started watching relatively late, but they're talking about the egg drop thing, and Aron says, well, how does this demonstrate intelligence? And Mr. Intelligent Design says, well, because you know, there's eggs, and then I drop the eggs, and Aron says, no, but how does that demonstrate intelligence? And then was it Jackson had piped up to say, well, you know, don't keep repeating your description of the experimental procedure. Wasn't Jackson, might have been the other guy that was there. But anyway, somebody had said that. Aron kept asking, how does this demonstrate intelligence? And then he would just repeat, well, I'm dropping eggs, right? And that's how I demonstrate. No, don't keep repeating your description of the procedure. We understand the procedure. Show us how the empirical results would lead to one conclusion or the other. And specifically, how the actual obtained experimental result led to the conclusion, which he says intelligence. It's not even really a conclusion, but whatever. He just couldn't do that. He just couldn't do that. And then Aron went on to a thing about dogs, and a totally non-contentious point. The reason why people go to the whole dogs come from wolves thing, dogs are wolves, is because that's not a contentious thing. You're very, very hard pressed to find a creationist who thinks that poodles and Great Danes were separately and specially created, and that there were separate places on the ark for poodles and Great Danes. I think very, very non-contentious point. So he's asking, so you know that, you know, well, domestic dogs are descended from wolves. And Edgar goes, yep. And then he goes, well, so then these things evolved into those. No. Okay, well, then he starts talking about this, what do you call it, biological interrelated? Capital B, lowercase I, capital I, or whatever. Like, what is he talking about? And so there's this weird moment, I shouldn't say moment, it extended for a period of time of like 10 minutes of Aron trying to drill down to this issue. Do you think dogs are descendants of wolves? Yes, you do? Oh, no, you don't? Oh, yes, you do? And like that just went on for like, oh my God, it was just maddening. But Aron did well. Aron was good about getting back to, okay, look, this is what we're talking about. And you know, he was really kind of sat back for a while and let Edgar explain, and Aron really was listening to try to get some traction on it. But when he got to that point that we've all gotten to with Edgar's explanation, where you just realize it's completely vacuous. He can't describe how the egg thing explains anything or proves anything or demonstrates anything. And you can't pin him down on a simple issue of whether or not dogs are descendants of wolves. So I get frustrated at that point where I think Aron actually toughed it out and just made a point of highlighting that.
Yeah, we owe an apology to Aron Ra. that was really, I watched it. I watched his expressions, and as Edgar became more and more incoherent, I was really shocked to see that Aron actually did have questions that somehow applied to whatever Edgar had said. By the time Aron actually started asking him questions, I'd completely tuned out. I was writing my next episode and just having the whole debate as a background noise, because it didn't go anywhere except. I mean, Aron was gracious enough to end it by saying it was a I think he said something like a gaggle of laughs or something, but that was
he had a
painful.
great phrase. I wonder if I can find it. He had a great phrase, and it drew some pretty good. Let's see if I can find it on here, because I remember. Bucket of chuckles. There it is.
Bucket of chuckles. That's
yeah,
it.
It was,
yeah.
which was good because it has a certain lyrical quality to it. You know, one thing I always find really funny about Aron is he's so spread out, right? Like he's in this form, that form. He physically travels to different countries and talks to people face to face in Australia or whatever, right? So he really doesn't invest himself, or I should even say over-invest himself the way many of us do. Like if, you know, for example, when I used the expression earlier about, yeah, how Edgar doesn't go full G-man, there are a number of people listening to this who are going to know exactly what that expression means. Tony, have you had a chance to have a little sit down with, let me give you a couple of names, G-man?
Yeah, I've actually I've debated him on his channel. I mean, not in a video, but in the comments of his channel.
Okay.
And I've also listened to him rant.
Yeah. Well, he had a good, I mean, we'll probably here, depends how many, as the topic sort of flows around, we might, I did have some observations about what happened last weekend, not this weekend, but last Sunday. But, you know, a lot of us kind of, I'll say, overinvest ourselves in, you know, G-man and true empiricism, and going back in the day, it would be a lot of Nephilim free. There were a lot of us that just, you know, if Nephilim free made a video where he was making farting noises with his hand in his armpit, you know, we'd all have to download it and watch it and cut apart the video and make our own response videos. You know, he was just he was just a go-to guy all the time, and we kind of overinvest ourselves in it. So what I find weird about Aron is that he's often unfamiliar with the people he's about to talk to. And when you've had conversations with Mr. Intelligent Design and you've watched his conversations, you know what's going to happen. And then, you know, you'll be talking to Aron and he'll say, oh yeah, I'm talking to, you know, or you'll be in a room with him and someone will say, oh, you should talk to this creationist. And the rest of us who know that guy are just going to go, oh, this is terrible. This is terrible. But Aron's like, yeah, I'll do it. I don't care. Don't know the guy. You guys are all saying he's goofy, but whatever. I'm going to do it. So I kind of like that. And it's always fun to watch Aron when he jumps into a conversation with somebody when he doesn't know the quirks of that person. By the way, Aron.
Yeah,
go ahead, please.
You're limited. I think he was a little limited because he really needed the argument to be coherent, and it wasn't even coherent enough to refute.
Yeah, and Aron is accustomed to that. There's just so many people who come in and they'll tell you, you know, A, B, C, D, and therefore X, and you're just like, okay, I don't even know how those things. You know, it's even hard to sort of get them to organize something. Aron's pretty good about extracting the structure of their argument and then sort of seeking out, even when the argument's presented poorly. But this one, it was just so bad. And by the way, Aron's also asked Steve, myself, and I'm pretty sure, I think Dragnet, a couple other people, he actually wants to have a conversation with a flat earther, like a really good diehard flat earther. And he's never talked to one. What's that sound mean?
I didn't realize we had to take flat earthers seriously until about 6 months ago, and I've been getting a lot of requests to cover some of their arguments. I tried to avoid it because I really had too much respect for even creationists to associate them with flat earthers, but they are a very large percentage of the creationist movement. So this season I'm actually forced to even do an episode on it, which I never thought I would be doing. I really didn't think anybody took that seriously yet. It'd be interesting to see if they ever decide to jump on the Hollow Earth bandwagon.
Oh, geez, yeah. Well, where does this go? Yeah, the flat. Well, I mean, the Hollow Earth thing is such a small minority. I mean, the thing I find, there's two things I find interesting about flat Earth. One is the thing you're talking about, how some creationists are like that. There's almost a spectrum. Like when I look at people's unjustified beliefs, I think there's a very, very large group of people who believe, unjustified, that there is a divine, very regal creator of the universe, who's omnipotent, omnipresent, you know, and continues to be involved in our lives. And you can clasp your hands together and have a conversation with this being who you know persists in being involved in our lives. And of course, he's got the time to chit chat with you about helping you find your car keys. So I find that a very common but unjustified belief. And then some subset of them also believe that, well, what the scientists are telling you about the explanation for diversity of life on Earth or the age of planets, things like that. Well, that's not true. And most of them don't buy into that stuff, but there's that subset that do. So the needle's just a little further over on the on that scale. And then you've got the flat earthers. And I find it interesting to watch two people who are further over on that scale than I am. I mean, surely I have some unjustified beliefs. But when they're sort of side by side on the scale, so you sort of picture like I'm on a point in the scale and I'm looking off to one side and I see, yeah, there's a like I would say Christian, evangelical, young Earth creationist, and then a little bit further away there's this other individual, this buddy standing right beside him, and he's an evangelical, young Earth creationist, flat earther. So to me, they're both out there on the nutty scale. Let's call it the unjustified belief scale. But to watch the two of them then have a conversation where they feel like they're 1,000 miles apart, because I believe the Bible's literally true. I think the Earth is between 6,000 and 10,000 years old. I believe we were fearfully and wonderfully made, and all these other things. Oh yeah, we both believe this. But you have this crazy notion of the shape of the Earth. Well, the person on the other side is looking at him saying, "Oh, you're buying into what the institution is telling you. They're trying to separate you from God." And they're like, "But I'm not separated from God." And to watch those people argue, and to see the young Earth creationist, even sometimes it's somebody that you yourself have been speaking with, and you see how they thumb their nose at scientific enterprise, and they say, "You can't believe what scientists are telling you. You need to open your heart. You need to bend your knee, and this is how you learn the truth." And then they turn the other direction and they're talking to a flat earther and they're like, "Well, I mean, how could the Earth be flat and the scientific consensus on the shape of the Earth be wrong?" Right? And they all of a sudden want to start arguing good science. Like, to me, that's just hilarious.
Yeah, but I've noticed that it appears to me that once somebody starts believing a conspiracy theory, which, let's face it, creationism has to be a conspiracy theory. Otherwise, there's no other reason to believe that almost all of the scientists in any related field are telling you lies. But once you start down the path of really accepting paranoid conspiracy theories, it's only a matter of time before another paranoid conspiracy theory works really well with your own paranoid conspiracy theory. So you can start off as a creationist and then find out later that NASA is also in on it too. And so, yeah, the Earth is flat. It's very nice that these paranoid conspiracy theories all tend to sort of support each other, in that the bad guy is the government, and scientists are all in on it. It's just such a common thing.
Oh, I totally agree, and it's I mean, I think at the heart of it is a flawed mechanism for separating fact from fiction. I've referred to it in other hangouts as your sort of truth-seeking toolkit. So when you hear a claim, there's certain skills or tools that you'll go to evaluate whether that's true or not. Like, you hear this thing. I remember when I was a kid, we thought the dinosaurs died out because of an ice age, and then several years later, you hear people talking about, oh, there was an asteroid hit the Yucatan Peninsula, and and then the shock wave went around the Earth 3 times, and there's fire in the sky and everything. What? That's what killed the dinosaurs? Why do they think that? And so a lot of us will sort of go to this truth-seeking toolkit. So when somebody makes this rather bizarre claim that the dinosaurs are actually wiped out by an asteroid, you do things like you ask questions. What evidence did you look at? Like, how well accepted is this idea? And what motivates this acceptance? What evidence or what observations did those experts sort of motivated them, or what changed their mind about what killed the dinosaurs? And then you'll get a whole conversation about the iridium layer and all these other things, and you say, oh, okay, well, that's why. And in fact, there's actually a crater that's visible from space on the north end of the Yucatan Peninsula. That's a big clue. So they'll tell you these things, and you do this. But there are other people that they seem to have this really crippled truth-seeking toolkit. And when you ask them for proof of something, like, okay, the flat Earth thing. Okay, so give me some evidence that supports your flat Earth theory. They'll come back at you with something like, well, you know that NASA was created by the Nazis, or Isaac Newton was a Freemason. And they go to this weird, like there's so many things wrong with that type of thinking. They go to, I'm asking you for proof of your position, but instead you're telling me some personal or ad hominem things about the people that you think I agree with. And you just go like, you have such a crippled truth-seeking toolkit that you're just open to anything. And then Tony, your second point, which I think is great, is the idea that once you bought into a view of the world that the government and big pharma and all these other agencies are really mean you no good, you start to believe some crazy stuff. Like I remember having a conversation with Arcane Logos one time about the scandal around Planned Parenthood. Surely you'll recall that they were up on some accusations that they were selling fetal tissue. Yeah. And when I was talking to Arcane Logos about it, and I was able to demonstrate to him that that story was actually faked, that this was an intentional, these so-called Christians had set themselves out on a course to where they were going to collect or fabricate evidence to show that this was going on. And he came to accept that. Arcane, when I explained it to him, he went, yeah, cool. Yeah, just one second, Ra, and then we'll let you. He accepted that as true, that this was faked, but then he still continued to believe that Planned Parenthood was harvesting and selling fetuses. And I said, well, then why would they do that? Well, on the black market. Of course, they're not going to document it. It's on the black market. So he just invented a whole new conspiracy. It was just loony.
Well, you know what? The thing is, what's going to happen is eventually he's going to say that the atheists are in on it too, because of the whole eating baby thing. But it is
go there.
Not yet.
He was on his mind.
There yet.
Raw Atheist has joined us.
Quite funny.
Oh, and I think your sound is quite good.
Okay, awesome.
How are you doing today? Did you watch the thing on the thing?
I got approximately a minute and a half into the thing and was incapacitated by laughter, quite literally. Him going through the beginning slides and then speaking for a few moments, it floored me. It literally floored me.
I know it was pretty awful. I wonder if sorry, Ryan, I wonder if you can F5 your way in and out. We're getting that. Your mic is good. It's the connection. There you go. He knows what it is. Everybody, it's almost to the point that glitch happens so often with Hangouts that you could just tell somebody, "Hey, buddy, F5," and he knows exactly what the problem is. Okay, let's give her another run.
I think it might be this iPad.
Oh, it sounds good. It sounds good now.
Okay, cool. I think iPad.
I mean, not to derail the conversation on this, but I think some of us who've encountered that problem and have tried to work out the tech support side of it is that it has more to do with the Google's the Google Hangouts applications changed to a peer-to-peer model. So if you just get a bit of a sketchy connection, it's actually the connection between devices, because it's peer-to-peer now. So we're finding that F5 tends to sort of set your little magic internet pixies through a different route, and it seems to work better.
Yes, but my magic internet pixies were trying to get into this call through an iPad that could not do it. It joined the call and it kept saying off air. So I went to the main computer, and when I turned the thing off and F5'd, I don't know which one of them did it.
That's intriguing. Our good friend Thalo Blue. Let me just check see if I got another message from her. She's messaged me. So I'm sat here and now it's live. ? So I sent her the link and she says it says off air. Now I misunderstood what she meant by that. So I don't know if that means like people are trying to join with the link I provided, and depending which device you're on,
it only took me to the on-air conversation when I came to my desktop with an i7.
Oh, thank you, Google. It's so frustrating because, I mean, the way these Google products work, I mean, they're amazing. It's absolutely amazing that we've got, Google Earth and Google Calendar, and we were talking to each other from at least 2 or 3 different countries. And
it pisses me off when people say, fuck Google.
I know, they're all upset about it. But that's the thing is that then you go, but then there's these goofy glitches, like your Google, for God's sake. Like, how do you not, or the way they make interfaces, they're so completely non-intuitive, counterintuitive. And then, but I don't know, what do? Do you demand your money back?
Your no money. I just kind of take a step back and say, okay, this godlike potential that was not possible centuries ago is kind of new and didn't cost me anything. And just, I'm happy about it.
But why don't you...
That's the perspective to have. Louis C.K. did a bit about people complaining about having to wait on the tarmac, and his response is, "Oh, and what did you do next? Did you fly in the air afterwards?" Yeah, you got to appreciate where we are.
Without 3 million pieces from Boeing, you didn't.
Yeah.
Well, Raw Atheist there. So you were actually venturing into making a point, maybe I don't know if you maybe made your point just about how it was sort of facepalm, face desk worthy.
No, I had a coup de grace with that point. The coup de grace was, I believe that little piece could be traveled to any famous atheist like Sam Harris or Richard Dawkins and bring him to the ground with laughter.
Well, which piece are you talking about? Remember, as I said in the opening here, I didn't actually watch the whole thing. I wasn't aware it was going to happen. And
I actually still have it paused.
Oh, you want to play through?
Let me do. I kind of do. No, I used this portion of my browser, but I'll find it again. I will screen share what killed me.
Yeah, or pass the link on me. I'm actually going to attempt to. You guys chat amongst yourselves. I'm going to try to find the link. I mean, you have to sort of wait a little bit for the rendering to be done. But they're just for amusement. Oh, here it is. Aron Ra debates Mr. Intelligent Design. If I hit reload on that.
Oh, it was on my phone. Okay. No, I still have it on my phone. Real intelligence. It's literally within a minute and 20 seconds. Aron Ra debates Mr. Intelligent Design. Okay. I have to mute because I'm about to turn into a completely worthless person on the mic.
Well, have you got a timestamp there? Because it turns out it has successfully rendered. So I show it as being
yes. It is before a minute and 20 seconds. So play up to a minute and 20 for pure comedy gold.
Well, then I'm just going to be playing it from the... Okay, let's do that.
From the beginning and stop.
Yeah, I'm
occasionally... That would be a timestamp of 0.
Yeah, sorry, I'm just taking a peek at those people. Okay, next I remember how to do this, so I need to first... oh, Jackson Wheat's not going to sue me, is he, if I share his silliness from his channel? What on
this is totally fair use. Totally fair use.
Yeah.
100%.
Okay, I'm going to crank that guy up.
I will provide as much satire as necessary.
Okay. And certainly feel free to unmute if you're going to laugh or guffaw, but try to not interrupt it too much, because remember, when I unplug my headset, we get the problem with the feedback loop. So mind your mute button, gentlemen. So here we go.
With Aron Ra and Mr. Intelligent Design, and also my co-moderator, gonna go for it, or Peter. And Mr. Intelligent Design is going to explain his new science of intelligent design today. So let's get right to it. This will be about an hour and a half, and Mr. Intelligent Design, you have about 10 minutes to make your opening statements.
Oh my God.
Okay, I'm going to screen share my...
Almighty forensic.
Okay, good morning to all of you here, and thank you for giving me time to share to you my news.
Look at the dolphin.
And wait, okay. So this is the logo of the new intelligent design.
The logo.
Okay, so this is the logo that I made. And I am the founder, discoverer, scientist. I'm a freelance scientist. Okay. Of intelligence. The reason why our science.
You're the freelance scientist.
Science until now, we are using the old one, the fake one, the one that is.
The fake one. This is the new. This is not the old science. This is not the old one.
Father, I think I am.
I gotta pause him for a moment there. That's
please.
He's a freelance scientist. I don't know what that means exactly.
And it is the real science. This is the new, not the old. This is not the old.
Yeah, he's the father. Is he a freelance father? I don't know what that means. Is there more to come on that part? I don't want to necessarily share big chunks of his video through there.
No, that's all I got to. God.
Oh.
I was like in my apartment, like on different pieces of furniture, laughing my ass off.
Yeah. Did anybody get a handle on this biological interrelation?
No.
So to assist, actually, I guess I should do the present thing here as well. So just because this was a big moment in the discussion, biological, in Aron trying to get some traction on this idea. Biological interrelation is that different parties in nature involving in the origin and change of all organisms with time for the preservation of life, governed by natural mechanisms for interrelation, result in variation of those organisms and originate speciation and eventually the variety of life forms we see on Earth. I don't see anything. I mean, how would a person
that is
sort of assess or
an
criticize?
Incredibly ambiguous statement.
It is. I don't find anything wrong with it. I really don't. I don't know what it means or why we need a new word for that. Different parties in nature and change of all organisms with time for the preservation of life. Yeah, it's just it's a. He uses punctuation. I guess that's good.
Yeah, that is. Is it for the preservation of life, or is it just what those things do?
Yeah. Yeah, I'm going to pick an arbitrary point here. I noticed in the opening he said it would be 1.5 hours, and there was some discussion of it wrapping up around the hour mark because it was Aron very quickly hit that point where we're just, when you ask the same question over and over again. I mean, there's a loop, right? Sometimes you ask a question, you get the same answer. Ask a question, you get the same answer. This is my frustration with having conversations with that DD fellow, is that he'll ask the same question over and over again. You give him the same answer over and over again. He'll just keep asking the same question. It gets dreary. In this case, it's
totally legitimate answer. Sorry.
What's that?
I apologize.
Oh yeah, okay. But
I was just commenting on the DD thing and interrupting you and derailing it horribly. Go ahead.
Yeah. Oh no, I get your point. Yeah. Well, in this case, it just seemed like Aron would ask him a question, and then taking up the answer, he would proceed as if that answer made sense. But then Edgar would then now have a different answer to the question, a simple yes/no question about where the dogs came from, wherever. And I think actually my favorite moment was right at the very end. But let's listen to
bits.
But
I'm not just talking about similarity.
Picture of one radish for day 5.
Just similarities.
It's just so incredibly random.
Showing a genetic ancestry.
No.
You have ERVs and other.
It's wrong.
What?
It's wrong. There are no such kind of.
So you do not accept that other species of dogs are related to domestic dogs or wolves. You're saying that
no,
species of dogs are uniquely different.
What I said based on interrelation.
Is that a yes or a no?
Where do you come from?
Plugins and the other fossil dogs, are they related to the modern living dogs?
Is it the T in interrelation?
They are related, so they do have a common ancestry. There is a lineage there. Thank you.
So much wrong. Like,
yeah.
But Richard Dawkins, have you answered Mr. Intelligent Design?
We are trying to conclude that the dogs has evolved from other species. Okay, not the dogs.
Right, no, I'm not. Right now, I'm only talking about dogs. I'm talking about different.
So I agree, because interrelation says also the same.
5 minutes, guys.
You said what now? Say that again.
Because biological interrelation explain also the
Okay,
related.
so before we get into interrelation, I need a clear, distinct yes or no.
Yeah, and you're never going to get that clear, distinct yes or no. So this part goes on for some time with Aron asking for a clear, distinct yes or no. You know, what the heck, right?
And I've seen it a million times.
Yeah, that part just goes back and forth for a long time.
I mean, like, Aron has videos for Once Forgiven, Now Free, which shows his interaction on the freedom or the God, whatever forum people used to do text debate on, and shows true empiricism on there. So he's been in the mud with some pretty intense trolls. Okay, he's been in the thick with them, and he's whacked his machete through them. I don't think he had any idea the swamp he was going to trod today.
Well, that was the indication I got. I got a feeling he wasn't really quite prepared for it. I think he might have actually, some point in time when he said Mr. Wheat, I was wondering where he was going to go with that. Was he going to leave the show or what?
I just one line I really want to find here. Yeah, I mean, Aron, I would like to kind of ask him at some point, like, was this the worst? Was this the worst? Sort of like, what the hell's going on? I mean, it's kind of hard to put them all on a single dimension though, because I know he's had worse. I've had worse conversations in terms of I guess the sense of courtesy, the ability to listen to what the other person's saying and at least attempt to answer the question. And Edgar really struggles with answering a direct question. I mean, he will. You can ask him a yes or no question, and he'll say yes. Now, it might not be his actual answer, but he'll at least answer it and let you press on. You know.
The scariest thing about Edgar is I think he's sincere. I think he's entirely, completely sincere.
You know, I think they all are. I think they all are.
No.
Well, no, yeah, I know that's going to require clarification because I think that there are many creationist apologists who are prone to lie about particular things, but I do think that they are sincere in their beliefs. I don't think they venture into a sincere inquiry into what the world is really like because they sort of mire themselves down in these other discussions that sort of pretend to talk about science. But I don't think, when I talk to them, I don't ever get the sense that, oh, they're just playing a character for money on the internet or something. I think they actually do believe these things.
Okay, well, I counter by saying that I think, not necessarily counter, I just want to continue the conversation by saying, I think that Mr. Intelligent Design has gone through, in his mental person, he truly believes he has come up with a scientific discovery through his thought experiments and thinks that it should be accepted. He's just kind of extremely dull and kind of like being there. He really just doesn't see it. With true empiricism, on the other hand, he is being dishonest. He truly, truly is. There's no possible way he can understand clinical trials, scientific studies, science itself, and call somebody with a doctorate in the field he's interested in a liar about it.
Okay, well, yeah, let's take that little diversion, which I hope will be brief. Yeah, when I say I was talking about the majority of them, I mean when it comes to true empiricism, he's a bit of an outlier. Listen to this polite phrasing. He's a bit of an outlier on the honesty scale. He is someone. First off, I think the beliefs he holds, he actually does hold them. I then think, second, he misrepresents his own beliefs. He plays them. He veils them when he's in a conversation or when he does his videos. I'll explain that in a second. But and then third, I think he will misunderstand and then misrepresent any bit of science or any fact or bit of information or event that has happened around him. He will quite freely just outright lie about that. And then when it comes to dealing with people, that's not a place where he's self-deceived. There are places where he'll just outright lie about something that happened. But again, I don't want to underestimate how much he's sort of self-deceived too. Like, well, actually, you know what? We can come back to that in a second, because I think that there's a broader point to be made on the earlier thing about how when I say he misrepresents his own positions. I want to say something about intelligent design and see if you guys agree with this. That one of the things it seemed to me that, or sorry, actually, do you have another point to make first before I tear off into that?
I was just going to mention one other person, G-Man, and several areas where I think he is dishonest, where I don't think he is sincere in his belief, where I don't think he sincerely is trying to deliver a Christian message to anybody.
Yeah, well, they definitely get wrapped up in like 1,000 things I want to say. I would try to pare it down here. They definitely get wrapped up in their own. They would deny this, of course, but they get wrapped up in their own sense of whatever. Like, what do people think about me? Am I a good person? Am I doing things right? What's that called when you're so self-absorbed? There's this thing that happened with G-Man last week. Yeah, well, that sort of carries some other baggage. That albeit true of them.
Superficial.
Yeah. Well, no, I just mean the whole thing. Like, what's the most important consideration in the world? Like, if you and I were having a conversation, like if we were at a car accident scene, and we're sort of render some care to somebody who was injured, and then you told me that you didn't like the tie I was wearing, that would be something completely irrelevant to the circumstances, and I would deem it unimportant under those circumstances. When they're having a conversation with somebody, the most important thing, if I'm G-Man, the most important feature of this conversation is how I look to people, right? That's what
Agreed.
I'm getting at. So there's irrelevant things that go on, like he doesn't care if you don't like the paint of the color of the paint on the wall behind him, and more so he cares about talking about spreading the gospel message. But even more than that, and much more than that, it's about the gospel of G-Man. And the way you can demonstrate that, this is the same is true for true empiricism. The way that this becomes painfully obvious is that when you see them in a discussion. So, for example, this thing with G-Man last week, where he was on Bible Thumping Wingnut, and then, it was Council of Google Plus. And then immediately open up another hangout right after that to be like, oh, those guys, blah, blah, blah. And he was up until about 4 a.m. Come Monday morning, he was still doing a hangout. And because a lot of people criticize G-Man because he can't get into a conversation about the gospel calmly. And that's not entirely true. I've seen him plenty of times. I've had that conversation where G-Man has shared the gospel message, where he's been calm about it and passionate but loving. The thing he simply cannot keep his wheels on the road is when you tell him he is wrong about something. That's the thing that makes him lose his shit.
I think I found the term you're looking for with true empiricism and G-Man is that their productions are ego-based. Yeah, very, very self-absorbed, very ego-based. It's all about that, and like he's and to them that is more important than any sort of a gospel message. And I would use the exact opposite of the gospel message. Exactly. Yeah. But yeah, you tell G-Man he's mistaken about something, he can't dial it back and listen and go, well, wait a minute, I'm pretty sure I'm right about this. Further, I think I have good reasons to believe the things that I believe. But here's this other person, when he's not wearing a tinfoil hat, this seems like a totally sensible person. Or in the case of what happened last week, he's talking this to a pastor. He's talking to somebody with a PhD later on. And he, this person, so this other person says, well, you're mistaken about this. He can't stop and go, well, why would that person think I'm wrong? What's their justification for thinking I'm wrong? He can't do that. He just hears he's wrong, and it just the gears start to grind in his head, and he can't do it. The example I'd give for true empiricism is the latest thing with the ATP beak gaze. Which, I'll tell you honestly, I was away, I do a lot of sort of traveling and working and stuff, so I don't really keep up on this stuff as much as people might think. So I kind of missed the whole ATP BKs thing. But then when I saw the clip, somebody had clipped it out and put it up there, and I was like, what? ATP not turning into something like beak not turning into something like, what the hell is he talking about? Whatever. It just sounded goofy. But I thought, why are people making a big deal out of this? To me, it didn't seem like something that was worth launching into a thing. Oh, look at this goofy thing that true empiricism said. He hasn't said worse. Like, is that really the worst, dumbest thing he's ever said? And well, surely it's just something that he said, whatever. And yet the thing is, it brought out in him the thing that makes true empiricism famous, is that all he had to do, and I've listened to the whole hangout, I've listened to the context and whatever, but all he had to do was say,
Okay, yeah, Beaks turning into ATP. Okay, yeah, that was. You know what I meant, guys, right? All he had to do was say, like Fiona, you've never slipped up and said something that two disconnected ideas came together, like in a live hangout. I mean, I'm doing it right now. I'm stammering. I'll get to my point here. Is it that's what you're going to agree with? So you agree with the stammering? Yeah. Here's my point.
I'm gonna have to take off.
Oh well, it was good.
Day.
It was good to meet you finally, and hopefully we'll chat again soon.
Definitely. Have a good one, guys.
Thanks. Yeah, sorry. I'll try that again. Everybody, I think most people know what I'm going to say anyway. All he had to do was say, yeah, okay, so that sounded goofy, but like seriously, I talked to that guy for 2 hours. You couldn't find something interesting in that hangout. You had to go pick on the one. Okay, whatever. Like you guys have never said anything goofy in a live on-air hangout. And by the way, here is what I meant to say. Here is the central message I was trying to get at. Does he do any of that? Does Ronnie do any of that? No, he doesn't give any sort of explanation like that. Instead, he goes to Ronnie strategy number 1, because he doesn't have strategy number 2. He goes to Ronnie strategy number 1. I am going to make multiple videos where I accuse several people of being liars. There are no liars in that situation. Nobody, I mean, people made fun of him for something that I guess wasn't that big of a deal. Now it's a big deal because, of course, he couldn't just clarify it. He had to come out and start calling a bunch of people liars. And he tells, but there is one liar. I'm sorry, there's one liar in the situation. True empiricism makes the claim that, it was the other guy who was talking about Beaks turning into something like ATP. And of course, the other guy never brought that up at all. I'm sorry. I keep saying ATB, which is the name of a bank where I'm from, and it is ATP synthase is what we're talking about. I'm saying ATB, and then I stop and I go ATP synthase. So yeah, I mean, people misspeak. I've done it like 4 times now in just trying to retell this story. My fervor to retell the story.
At least it's not VEB Bank. What? Or VET. Never mind.
Never mind. Yeah. So
Trump should do it, didn't work. No.
Yeah. It also shows how little I paid attention to the whole thing. Yeah, I'm sorry, because his whole thing is the ATP synthase. I mean, I'm sorry. I got to let you guys talk here, but it just because I didn't comment on this while this was going on, is just a bunch of thoughts popping up here. One of them is, if people are wondering what the hell is ATP mayonnaise, I'm glad you mentioned that, Raw Atheist, because this is people have been asking for a long time. Why do you guys keep saying ATP mayonnaise? Why do you say ATP mayonnaise? And what it refers to is the phenomenon that Ronnie, when he's in a conversation and his mouth is working faster than his brain, he ends up going to a set of catchphrases, like multiple components working together in a coordinated fashion, or whatever that expression is. He's got these little phrases that his brain just like dumps down to his mouth when the brain can't keep up with what his mouth is saying. And one of them is that just
jargon bombs.
Yeah, I need a thing to say ATP synthase. So we started calling that ATP mayonnaise when it was just the thing that you add to any conversation anytime. And yes, Udo, I see you. I apologize. I just saw that comment. I'll get to it in a second. So that's what he did. He starts talking. The other guy was talking about Beaks. So then Ronnie starts into, Beaks, and then turning ATP synthase. Right. So that was one of the best examples of ATP mayonnaise. That's exactly what happened there. Whatever. But so then he comes up with this implausible story that the other guy was talking about Beaks turning into this protein or something like a protein, which is like, what are you talking about? The other guy didn't bring that up. And
wow, you just totally brought that full circle for me. Like
that mayonnaise.
Yeah, the mayonnaise thing. I never, like, in my head, in my model of what Ronnie is, which is kind of a complex thing, I never thought he goes into a jargon bomb when he's in trouble in a conversation, and anything will pop up from the jargon that he knows, like ATP synthase. So since they were talking about bird beaks and he got into an area where he was very ignorant, he reached into the jargon quiver and was like, I'll just start firing arrows from the jargon quiver until this guy shuts up.
The jargon quiver. Oh, God. Yeah. Pseudonym, how are you? He's not well. Pseudonym is not well. He's dead.
Oh my
Off
God.
he goes. He'll be back.
Very not well. We lost him.
Yeah.
We're terrible doctors.
I'm getting multiple corrections here. Now it says, Heavy Holler says it was ATP turning into a beak. I think it was a beak turning into something like ATP synthase. I think that's
it was because I made a joke about how the Empire State Building in a few minutes is going to turn into a 1939 penny.
Yeah, it's just. Oh yeah, that's right. The scale comparison. Yeah, there's that. Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
who knows what he meant by? I mean, I'll tell you what I think he meant by it, and it's a sensible point. Again, I'm not saying that I would agree with it, but I'm getting, and I'm not saying I don't disagree with it because again, it's just I'm guessing it's so opaque. But he's saying that yeah, we see features of organisms, and these are inherited, and they're subject to modification, like beak length, beak thickness, beak breadth. Even the functions of beaks, these things can change, over time and these speciation events. Okay, so but that itself isn't going to, in the creationist view, it's not going to lend itself to something like the creation of something new and majestic. So people are going to remember from 3 years ago the famous misquote. I mean, I've since taken credit for it, but DNA is nifty. Right. I mean, Ronnie's argument for a year or two had been that DNA is nifty, and I would just ask him, well, DNA is nifty. I agree. So what? Now his argument is ATP synthase is nifty. Okay, yeah, ATP synthase is nifty. So what? But he's saying that if you believe in evolution, if you believe in abiogenesis, you are obliged, you're obligated to provide an explanation for how this new nifty ATP synthase thing came to be. And if you don't have that explanation and the mechanism and the proof of those things, then you don't have a complete theory. You don't have a coherent theory. This has been the position he's taking. So I think that's what he's saying is that okay, yeah, we have beaks and those things are inherited. They're subject to modification. Great. But that doesn't get us to a place of explaining the nifty things like ATP synthase or like DNA. So I think he has a point, a sensible point that he could make if he could sort of organize his thoughts when he's talking to people. But he cannot, once he's caught out on a mistake. Here's my central point, and then we'll let Pseudonym try another mic check here. Once he's caught out on a mistake, he cannot get his point. He gets completely log jammed. He simply cannot make his point after that. He now has to regroup and muster everything he can to defend his public image. Somebody said that I said something silly. Well, I need to defend myself. I need to show how what I did wasn't silly, and I need to show how everybody who suggested that what I said was silly is in fact a liar. And in doing so, he'll even tell lies. He'll say that the other guy brought up the whole ATP synthase thing, and he'll what was it? And then he made up another lie after that that was just plain goofy on its face. Oh no, he made another video where he played the clip. And it's like 7 minutes of him describing, here it comes. I'm going to give you the proof. I'm going to give you the proof that there was the other guy, the atheist, that he doesn't ever give us his name. I'll give you the proof that the atheist is the one who brought up ATP synthase. I'm going to give you the proof. Here it comes. Here it comes. Now you're going to hear the part. Here it comes. Here it comes. He's got like 7.5 minutes of him setting it up. And then he plays one sentence from the atheist, the unnamed atheist. And it's nothing like what he's built it up to be. And he simply cannot admit that true empiricism himself was the one who brought it up. Pseudo, you feeling lucky this time? You've got a mic that works. I'm not feeling it, Pseudo.
I'm going to say disconnect on your iPad or phone. Just close the app down.
I wonder if...
And then refresh on your computer. Which is a totally random guess. And... yeah. Along with your the antecedent point, I completely agree. And it's brought my picture of it closer to full circle. The thing is like, this is never going to stop. He's going to continue to do stupid things that we point out and laugh at and blah, blah, blah. And eventually he's going to get to like 50. And he's going, any time he contemplates his life, is going to incur massive depression. And that hurts me. Just thinking about that can cause depression in myself.
I do.
And
there's I sort of have that empathetic antenna as well. And there are times that when I see what true empiricism puts himself through, you know, where he's just vibrating that people said that he said something that was wrong or silly or whatever, and it really upsets him. And then he's got to make all these videos, and he'll host a hangout where it's just himself talking. He doesn't even invite other people, you know, friends or enemies or whatever, into the room with him. He hosts these hangouts, and just sits there. And it's not even a hangout. It's just him talking to himself, and he gets 8 or 9 viewers, and then 12 seconds later he deletes it. Like,
Yeah.
What is going on?
It's
so we're going to give
ongoing mental breakdown.
Yeah, I feel bad for him. I wish he were having fun. I don't have any hatred for him. We disagree on things, but I wish he were having fun disagreeing with me on stuff. That's what I really wish for him.
Right.
We're going to pass out real quick the general recommendation. If people want to join, if you're having trouble joining on a mobile device, try to find yourself an actual Windows or Macintosh-based PC and see if you can't get in that way, because I'm getting word that people on mobile devices are getting that the Hangouts off air or something, whatever else. And Pseudo, how is your luck this time? Again, just not getting the vibe from this guy.
Okay, so to attempt to collect my point from earlier, I'm trying to remember exactly what I was going to say. And it's not coming, so I'm just going to wing it. Basically, it's like it's just going to keep getting worse and worse with him. There's no way it's ever going to stop. He's not going to approve intelligent design. Nothing like that is going to happen. It is going to be an ongoing mental breakdown, a continuing spiral. Okay, but I think that there is a way out for him that we can help with, and it's something like what I'm doing for myself. My name is The Raw Atheist, but everybody knows my real name. If they want it, they can have it. I'm becoming a criminalist, and I want to become a criminologist, and I'm going to school for it. Now everybody online who knows me can support me, and it can be a big positive thing, me developing my career. And I can kind of remove myself from this conversation a lot, because I'm becoming a criminalist. I'm going to catch serial killers. I know an incredible amount of that. Like, literally off the top of my head, I could start talking for an hour, 2 hours, 3 hours about it. And now people can say, I know a criminalist, this guy, blah, blah, blah. And everything about it is great. And it's made my life so much more positive. And when I'm applying for work, I don't want my name to be easily summoned.
That's a big issue. That's a major reason why I keep my stuff separate. Although, and the other thing is interesting is that there's any number of people that we could have in a hangout and say, tell us about you. I mean, without doc dropping yourself, tell us about you as a person, your interests, and you're going to hear a bunch of different things. I mean, obviously, people know that I have some kind of a job, and they know that I'm married and I have kids, because the kids are, you know. But I can also talk about other interests, and you know, Fiona, who is a believer, could talk about her other interests. So she could fill your ear with stuff about horses, and there's just so many different things. Everybody.
I know some of your interests. I literally know some of your interests.
Is it nothing
like paraphilia?
Paraphilia.
Like paraphilia is one of your interests, not paraphilia itself, but of paraphilia itself, which is bizarre sexual or desires.
No, I've done one video on it years ago. I don't think it's an interest. I might be misreading what you're saying. I had to even pause and say, I remember that word because I did a video on it like 10 years ago.
Yes, that was your hand over mouth video.
Yeah, well, that doesn't necessarily an interest of mine.
From that, so you don't know anything about it. Never mind. I believe it is somewhat of an interest on a mild level, but that's just me.
Okay. Well, it could be a misread. You're not going by the YouTube name, are you? A lot of people read a lot of
no. Just your behavior and your attitude towards things when talking about various things like transgender, pedophilia, homosexuality, and things like that.
You know, there's a lot of stuff I talk about when it comes to things like that. But let me make the point about how this projection is, I think, an interesting phenomenon, because you notice there's any number of people, and when I say both the Christians
No,
and
I
the
am
atheists.
interested in paraphilia. I'm not projecting. Okay. I advertise.
No. I'm sorry. No, I wasn't saying project. I was going to go back to the point about the accusation we get quite often. Thalos, sound is working great.
Sorry, am I causing a problem?
Yes,
no,
it's me.
Just by your presence. No.
I'm so sorry. I've been running around ragged trying to get a connection to this Hangout, and it's been absolutely doing my head in.
Well, let's address that first. So what happened? I know you sent me a message that said that it was showing us off air.
Yeah,
but,
I could not get in. But I was on an iPad, and I've been running around with my phone and iPad, and then my husband comes in and I'm telling him, fix this for me, and he has. So I'm here. Okay.
So because the internal processor, the Snapdragons are not powerful enough to run this feature.
This was absolute. I don't know what was going on. I've had to come off my iPad, which was perfectly fine, and now I've got a headset on. I've got 3 terminals going. It's like, Hogtie, what are you doing? Why can't you run a Hangout just from an iPad? What is going on?
Yeah, I don't know. Are you on a mobile device now, iPad or phone?
No. I've got a headset on with a microphone. I've got 3 screens.
Oh, wow. Try running the Hangout from an iPad. I wonder if we can connect from iPads.
No,
if it is
the iPad don't work. The iPad was rubbish. It wasn't working. I was sat there by myself in a Hangout by myself. It was like nobody was there.
But wait, anyway. With the same link?
Yeah, it was weird.
That makes no sense. I can understand if it was that you couldn't join a Hangout. I've had it happen on my Android device where you'll get sorry, that'll can you Control D. If you're sitting at a keyboard, you've got Control D. It's just I'm getting a wicked echo.
Let me pause.
Yeah, I get the I forgot what I was going to say now. On Android, sometimes you'll go to join a Hangout and you'll click the thing and it just sits there. And after 2 minutes, all of a sudden, well, now you're in the Hangout. So I could understand if it was an issue processor thing or something in the software so that you just can't join. But that's the weirdest thing that you're saying, that you could be in a Hangout, but it wasn't this Hangout. Because I've sent you only one link ever. It's not like you click the Hangout.
No, that was it. The Hangout, I was in that Hangout and I thought I was by myself and I was talking to myself, and it was like, okay, let's go. And but then you were
same
live.
Thing happened to me.
Wait, well, it does sound like that there's some issue
probably is happening.
Yeah, with the mobile devices. Well, maybe we can.
I think it might be the type of device you're using.
Yeah, people
if you started it from a tablet or phone.
Well, before,
which I don't know if you
before I was just on an iPad, and then now I'm on some kind of, I don't know what I'm even on. I've got a headphone, I've got a headset, I've got a microphone, I've got 3 screens I'm looking at. This is the real deal. This is like Swordfish. This is going on. This is everything.
Well,
that is like Swordfish.
It is like Swordfish without the BJ. It's going on.
I don't know. Wow, I was with you to point.
The BJ.
Is there a movie I've missed?
Jesus. Yes.
Do you not remember the film
Swordfish?
Do you not remember the film Swordfish from about 10 years ago? Hugh Jackman, John.
It's called Swordfish.
Huh. All right. Well,
anyway,
is that a recommend? Is that
no? Well,
no, it's okay.
It's only a recommend if you like Hugh Jackman, which I do.
Less so.
I really don't.
Blowjobs? Hugh Jackman. Now, those
I do like.
No. Yeah, well, check it out. Check it out.
It's a good question you're answering now. You do. Okay, let's press on. Also, I don't want to make this terribly long.
Makes sense.
Yeah, I do have a whole bunch of work to do today. I just kind of wanted to take a moment to sort of goof around a bit about the Aron's discussion with Mr. Intelligent Design, a little bit about G-Man's adventure last week, and a little bit on the true empiricism truth wobbliness while he accuses everyone else of lying. Sorry, I thought we had a point there about the the projection thing. Oh yeah, you don't have lives. That's it. We hear this all the time. Let's just wrap up this point, then we'll press on. There is a point I want to make.
I
about
have a point to wrap up with it.
Oh, okay. So they often say, you guys have no lives. These atheists are just on the internet like 12 hours in a row. They just do hangout after hangout after hangout after hangout, and they don't have lives. They don't have lives. And I just go, wait a second. If we had a little discussion about what our interests are, we would all have an array of things that we're interested in. I quite often, every time I'm in a hangout, what's the one thing I talk about every hangout? And that's how I don't have time to do hangouts. I just did it like 2 minutes ago.
There will be a common interest. That's the exciting thing. There is always a common interest. There's a thing that connects us, but everybody thinks of the thing that divides us. That's the problem. Yeah.
Well, that's it. I'm sure that you could pick any, and that's why the conversation ends up meandering quite a bit. And a lot of these times we do 8-hour hangouts because it turns out, oh, you're interested in Bob Ross, for example. That had come up recently. Oh, let's talk about Bob Ross for 10 minutes.
Well, I can talk about Bob Ross for a million years because obviously that's where I get my name from. It's the colour that he uses, the blue, and it's particularly funny because that was the connection that I had with Antonio Fletcher.
Yeah, me too.
Because,
well, that's a rare exception because Antonio and I have had, well, you know, G-Man and I have had conversations about, not in the last couple of years, but we used to talk about other things that were going on in the world. But for the most part, again, I just want to sort of address, and I think Raw Atheist had something to say about this too, but you have nothing to do with your lives, just nothing to do with your lives. Well, you know what? I'm too busy to do hangouts. I have to sort of make time to say, yeah, I'll throw up a hangout or I'll join someone else's hangout for 20 minutes. And yet, who are the ones who, literally, if you ask them what their interests are, it's Jesus Christ, it's spreading the gospel, or it's intelligent design, or whatever else. So that's all. That's all they talk about. And they often do their videos like, yeah, so I've been thinking about what I want to do with my channel and how I want my channel to grow and what my goals are for my channel. And just like when they're in the shower or they're just like doing their dishes or having a poop, that's all they're thinking about is what I'm doing on YouTube and what I'm doing on Hangouts to spread the message, you know, and that's all they think about.
I do think that a lot of videos that are made are like a stream of consciousness. Well, it's like your shower thoughts. It's like, and I'm just thinking, I don't think that's a YouTube worthy comment. It's like the things you think about when you're in the shower. It's complete. I don't know. It's like really nebulous. And I think if you were to type it up and to read it back to yourself, you would think, oh really? It's like, or I would say a shower thought, or I would say like a drunk thought. It's like the BS that you talk when you're loaded. It's like it's fascinating to read it back or to hear it back. You know.
Yeah. Well, the difference there, Blue, is that when I'm drunk or high, neither of those things I do anymore, but or just really tired or whatever else, I have a diversity of crazy shit that goes through my mind. And if you ever get into a conversation with me when I'm liquored up or stoned or whatever else, again, we're talking about a few years ago, but it would be interesting. I can promise you that.
It's probably, I would see it like a Big Lebowski kind of thing. It's like, you're like, hey man, how is it? You know, but you go from topic to topic and that's
they don't.
No, well, it's interesting. It's like those are the conversations that you need to pick up on. Those are the points you need to rein in. It's like you said this or you said that, and you need to pull that back and you need to remind them what they've said. It's fascinating.
You could type up a transcript of G-Man's latest video on 2 Corinthians. Was it 2 Corinthians 4:4, where G-Man said, and I'm going to quote, but I'm going to use ellipsis because I'm not going to quote every word, right? So I'm going to cut out a couple of bits of it at the risk of gutting his central meaning. But this is an actual quotation. In that video, there's about a 20-minute section where G-Man says the following: Steve McRae, something, 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 Steve McRae, Steve McRae, and Steve McRae, Steve McRae, Steve McRae, Steve McRae. And this goes
Yes.
on for like 20 minutes because that's what's on G-Man's mind. When he's in the shower, when he's having a poop, he's thinking about Steve McRae. I'm sorry, Ra. I feel like we're holding you back. What's on your mind?
Well, no. I made a text mantra to myself, and I remembered it completely. They said we don't have any lives, and that is the exact opposite from the truth. And by design, I am going and making the career I want to have for myself, and I know all these cool people like this quirky other atheist guy who's smart, knows a lot of stuff from Canada, and this Australian chick, and this other Canadian guy, and they're like my friends, and I can bounce ideas off them.
Actually, I'm from.
And when I say something, I confused it.
Let him get away with it.
I'm from England. No, I'm from England.
England, even better.
Okay, that's fine.
And I can bounce ideas off them. If I say something that's out of like crazy or sadistic, they can point that out to me and pull me back. And I can be an interesting person for them. I can be interesting to them. I can be funny, and they can call me for their hangouts and their birthdays and things like that because they want me to be around. And that's not what these people are doing.
Yeah, well,
I think they're gonna miss out on a lot. And the point I had was, I think if we like push true empiricism over the edge and say like, go get the career you want for yourself, I think he might have a big turnaround. And that's like my last thing I could possibly try with him.
I like the idea of helping people come to recognize their talents and helping them recognize their foibles. And we all kind of help build each other with our honesty.
Well, it's getting kind of urgent now that we have superstorms and things like destroying states today.
Yeah, well, important but unrelated to that. I don't ever make it my mission to make Nephilim Free or True Empiricism or G-Man better people.
Well,
it would be like,
well, I'm young,
finding a yeah. Well, you sort of give up on the whole hurt bird thing after a while.
It's true.
Because I'm relatively new to G+. I don't know how long I've been here, actively been here about probably maybe just like 4 months or so. But I do think that True is a lost cause. But then maybe not. But I do hold out for G-Man that he can be. I don't know what's the phrase, that he can be educated, maybe that's the word. I mean, I've posted the most of my direct posts on G+ to anybody have been to G-Man, and he's kind of responded here and there. And I always think that he just needs that particular turn of phrase, that particular way of thinking that will convince him. It's like that. It's not a magic bullet as such, but it's...
What improvement would you wish for either G-Man or True Empiricism or any of the people in the camp?
True, I don't know with True. I don't know, but with G-Man, I just think he's not been shown, or he's not been educated in a particular way. He just needs to be. He just needs to be given particular material.
There's a distinction I want to draw here about, in terms of making someone's life better. Would you wish for G-Man that he understood things, understood facts, understood science, for example?
Yeah.
No, not really. For G-Man, it would be to find someone he falls in love with and get married, pretty much.
Yeah, my wish
really
for
it.
If there was some way that I could influence someone else's life, it doesn't bother me that G-Man doesn't understand evolution and doesn't believe in it. It doesn't bother me that True Empiricism kind of understands it certainly better than his brothers, but he doesn't accept it. That you know what? That's fine. It doesn't even bother me that Arcane Logos thinks the world is flat. I mean, it bothers me a little bit. I kind of think like, man, how do you function like that? But I know that that's not their biggest problem. I mean,
I have a very active imagination. Like, I think what could happen to G-Man is he's already past his 40s, so he's not going to find a new career. I think what could happen for him is he finds a woman that he's attracted to and that's attracted to him, and falls in love with and gets married, and then he has a kid that he tells, you can be whatever you want, and I'm going to work my entire life to making that a reality. And then he becomes a proud father who actually does that. He has to not abuse the kid. He has to not brainwash it.
Yeah. I get.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well,
that's like a best case scenario. Like I said, active imagination.
Yeah. The thing that I would like them to learn, it isn't about facts. It isn't about science. It's about knowing the shape of the earth or knowing the best explanation for the diversity of life. It is about don't be a dick. This is the one thing I would like for them to learn.
Yeah, don't be a dick. Don't be a dick.
Absolutely.
Sorry if I'm interrupting.
In the UK, well, for me, myself, it's don't be an arsehole. Don't be an arsehole. And
exactly right.
Yeah, and I think if you can apply that just generally, whether you're a theist, an atheist, a deist, whatever, an apatheist, absolutely. Do you know what I mean?
Well, there's a reason why I would specifically target. Sorry for interrupting, but there's a reason why I'd specifically target this at the evangelicals, because I mean it's a bit of an apple pie statement. It's okay. Go ahead. It's a bit of an apple pie statement to say, well, don't be a dick, or you should be nice to people, or whatever. Like we should all strive to improve our manners. That's great, but there's a reason why I would specifically address this concern to the evangelicals, because they subscribe to a club. It's evangelicalism, where they believe that I'm a follower of Jesus Christ. Jesus taught us to turn the other cheek. Jesus taught us to be generous. Jesus taught us not to hate. Jesus taught us to love. Your mic is actually working this time, Pseudo.
It is. I don't see the green. Oh, there's the green dots. Yep. I switched to Google. That's why I switched over to Chrome.
To Chrome. Oh, okay.
Yeah, I was on Firefox. It's a Firefox.
Hang on. My cameraman is. Okay, sorry. Well, sorry. Somebody just said in the live chat that it's such a low standard for people to say don't be an arsehole. But if you just think don't be an arsehole,
they're missing the mark. So
it's like, well, just think of that. If you're going to dictate to people how they should live, that's you being an arsehole. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
If you say that you should do this or you should do that.
Well, no, hold on. I'm going to take exception to that, because again, we always say whenever you tell somebody you think something's a good idea, that is you saying you should do this or shouldn't do that. You should not smoke. You should eat vegetables, right? That's not me telling you how to live your life, but it is giving you my opinion about what makes for a better or a worse existence. And so I get your point about it's when you're sort of snide and snarky and bossy about it.
But is smoking being an arsehole?
Well, it depends how you do it, right? If you go and you sit in someone else's car and you do it.
Yes, okay, absolutely. And then if you're blowing smoke in somebody's face, absolutely, you're an arsehole. Yeah.
But you're an asshole.
Right. But the thing is, telling somebody, so I can express that I don't think people should smoke cigarettes, but by the same token, there's a way that can be done that is compassionate and considerate, and a way that can be done as an asshole.
Yeah, there you go. So you can smoke, but don't blow it in my face. If you blow it in my face, you're an arsehole.
No, it's like of an actual addiction to the substance nicotine. It's doing this damage to your body. It's going to take you this long to wean off of it using this, and this, and this is the health benefits you could potentially have.
I know. The only reason I brought up the cigarettes thing was to sort of tackle the issue of the word should, because we all the time tell people you should or shouldn't do this. And that doesn't mean that I'm commanding you. I'm not your mother, right? It's just I happen, people have certain beliefs about what we should or shouldn't do. And when you're in a hangout and you express, and I kind of react to it because you get this quite a bit. When somebody does something that's wrong, then like somebody, I don't want to derail onto that point. I just want to get back on the
Well,
don't be a
okay,
dick thing.
I've got
No,
to
no,
They're genuinely
on don't be a dick. I have like
Say
a
what-
point to make with it. It's
Okay.
some people are such dicks. Some people are so much of a dick that they literally kill other people. Okay? And if you don't want that happening, you're like me. Okay? And I am going to go out and physically stop those people. Those people are so much of a dick that I'm going to physically go out and stop them. If you're being just the level of a dick to where you just piss other people off, you get a conversation with me and not a visit. That's the point.
Oh yeah, okay. But now I've kind of lost the thread of. As I did want to make a point about evangelicalism is that I mean everybody would agree you shouldn't be a dick. That's fine, except for evangelicals. They will say that Jesus taught this and Jesus taught that, but you look at their behavior and you look at what they encourage each other to do. And if you're looking for a case in point, G-Man had a hangout. Why did Adam and Eve sin, or what was the fall? Whatever. It was the one he did last Sunday, early into Monday morning. And Antonio, after the Council of Google Plus last week, Antonio Fletcher joins. Antonio Fletcher, sensible guy. You could go for coffee with the guy, and he's polite and respectful and everything. But once you listen to how he talks about theology and about how Christ affects his life, you are horrified to see what a tremendous dick he is and how much he encourages other people to be total dicks. He doesn't speak much in the hangout, but when he does, he opens his mics to say things like, "Oh yeah, you know they hate you, brother. That means you're doing things right." And there's several moments he speaks up in there where that's his only point, is that when people hate you, you're doing the right thing. Well, really? If I came over to your house when you were having, let's say, Antonio, you go join your family for Thanksgiving dinner, and I just boot the door in, and we were using an example, blowing smoke in people's face. So I light a cigarette, and I start just blowing smoke into your grandmother's face. And then I upset your whole family. I'm going to turn to you and say, well, I guess you're all angry with me. That means I must be doing it right.
Oh, man.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's ridiculous. It's
I mean,
so morally backward.
There is kind of the two personas of people, I think, on here and in real life. I think people don't. I can't speak for G-Man because I think maybe he is as you see is as you get. But it's like there are a lot of other guys, and they get on with their job. They do what they've got to do, and when they're on G+, they're full ball. They go for it. They're all out, and they say this, that, and the other. But in real life, they don't. They're kind of reserved. Again, with G-Man, I don't think he is. I think G-Man is like I said, what you see is what you get. He's all or nothing. But there are guys that are reserved because they know that in real life, IRL, as my kids say, you are one thing, and on the YouTube, this, that, and the other, you're something else. You're performing. It's like it's a ministry, isn't it? It's an online show, circus, ministry.
That's almost literally exactly what it is. Yes.
It's a show. It's a performance.
It is. But it doesn't have to be. That's the thing. I mean, maybe we have to have pro wrestling around, or maybe not.
Well, sorry, go on.
For me, it's not an online circus. I have all these different characters. The ones that are serious, I have Jade, Fiona, Drag, Sam, Hogtie, all these different people, all these different characters. It's like this fun show, and we can get together and do like a panel show, and we can even do it about live news. We can have this fun. We can have all this fun with this great tool that we've been given. But some people just don't recognize it for what it is, and I don't think I want to make fun of them anymore. I want to try to help them until I get too calloused.
Well, I had a conversation, a semi-conversation with Hilarious Zulu, And he said how that G-Man was bringing everybody to Christ and this, that, and the other. And I said to him,
Since when?
Pseudo, check it out. Because I said to Hilarious, I said, how many people do you know have come to Christ because of G-Man? And he said,
well, I don't exactly
none.
have a list, but...
No, exactly. And I was like, then check yourself, man. Do not say that
what about the hangout we had and Zulu showed up and we showed him stuff that G-Man says? He goes, oh, G-Man never said that. You show him the video. It's like,
yes, but do you know what? Do you know what?
Well,
I forgive Zulu for his youth. His youth.
Yeah, I will give him that. Some of this stuff is
that literally is it.
Zulu's only been around for about a year. You know, he doesn't have the history. But to stand up and defend the guy, and then someone shows you a video, and it's like, yeah, you say we're lying about this stuff? No, the guy really does it.
I had a hangout. I was in a hangout with Zulu. It was an off-air hangout.
We're not going to broadcast you.
Zulu, Druss can come in. I spoke to Zulu and I said, listen, you want to be within a group, and this isn't the group you need to be in, because they will throw you under the bus. And I feel that I felt like I was the teacher, because I'm about 20 years older than Zulu, and I felt like I was the teacher and he was the pupil. And
so
it was really...
Phalo 28, okay.
No, that makes Phalo about 40 odd. Because he's about, yeah, anyway.
Well, he acts like an 8-year-old.
Yeah, of course. And I was saying to him, you don't have to front. He is from the same part of the world I'm from. He's about 20 miles down the road from me. And I'm like, stop trying to front with people. Do you know what I mean? But he wants to, and I'm not trying to take his faith from him. I actually said that to him. I'm not trying to take your faith from you, but I'm trying to make you think about what you think about, basically.
Well, I anticipate things to be worse for Zulu, because he's bought into that particular, and it's not Christianity, it's evangelicalism, where they turn their back. I mean, everybody has to sort of pick and choose what they think is important in the Bible. I've used an example before that there's like the snake handlers in the U.S. that believe that the real quote unquote real Christians are the ones who handle snakes. Other Christians don't believe that is really important or even authentic. Some people argue that
I don't know of many snake. There is a Pentecostal. There's a Pentecostal church not far from me, but that's pretty far out. I don't know about Druss, but
well, I use it as an extreme example. I mean, you can look at all the things that appear in the Bible, and let's actually narrow it down to even just things that Christ had said, or you know, that the Bible claims that Christ had said. There's a lot of stuff in there about turn the other cheek, and just all the nicey nice stuff. And a lot of Christians think that was really the important parts of it. The evangelicals turn their back on that stuff. I mean, the really big one, when Jesus was asked, this appears in 2, I think maybe 3 of the Gospels, when Jesus was asked about what are your commandments for us, and he ends up restating a subset, not all of the 10 commandments, but he restates a subset of them, and then adds another one to to love one another, or love your neighbor as yourselves, things like that. One of them that Jesus restates consistently. They're different. They're different subsets in the different Gospels, but one of them that is consistent from the 10 Commandments, and each of the times that Jesus is quoted in saying it, was not to bear false witness against your neighbor. And this is a really, really important message. And I don't think Jesus invented it, or I don't think that it was invented for the Old Testament. But the idea of you need to take care when you speak. It's not even about lying. It's about taking care when you speak. If I had heard that, say, Dragnut was, somebody told me, oh, he was actually arrested for kiddie fiddling, and I went out and I repeated that without looking into it. That's a terrible thing for me to do, right? You don't speak ill of other people unless
because back in the day, all the time, that would get you stoned.
But isn't it like your Hogtie? Sorry, it's your analogy that you made about people burning down a gas station and people being a pig fucker. It's like,
yeah, I should have stuck with those actually instead of the
no,
pedophilia thing.
absolutely, no, exactly. I'm like a long-time listener, first-time caller. It's like that. I know all your arguments. It's like,
me too. G-Man burns down a gas station and the attendant died.
Yeah, it's really weird when you talk to somebody that you know what they've already said before. It's really bizarre. But it's like that. They'd rather you call you. They would rather. What is it, Hogtie? They'd rather you say that you were that they burned down a gas station than being a pig fucker.
Well, I know it's not so much that it's the double standard, in that they will complain if I were to say, as I've never said, that true empiricism is a pig fucker, something I've never actually said. I use it as an example, but if I were to say something like that, that's my assessment of his character. It's not saying that he actually did a particular thing. That is horrifying. Can you believe that Hogtie said that? Oh, look at how evil those atheists are. They have no moral compass, blah, blah, blah. But at the same time, they would be willing to say Hogtie burnt down a gas station, right? They'll be willing to tell specific lies about people. And so here's an important thing that Jesus tells them: be careful in your witness of other people. Be honest. And when you go to say something bad about somebody else, two conditions need to be in place. Number one, you have to have really, really good reason to believe that it's true. And number two, you have to have a reason to tell the other person. If I hear something bad about you, I don't need to go tell other people this bad thing, even if it is true. But they don't, they don't concern themselves with that part of it. They concern themselves with the message of evangelism. They are told, we are on a great commission. We're out here to preach the gospel. That's so just like the snake handlers are told to believe that the most important thing is to handle snakes, evangelicals believe that evangelism is the important thing. And they don't worry themselves about the whole generosity and honesty and being compassionate. They don't worry themselves about that. And in fact, when you listen to how they talk to each other, the things they encourage each other is the hatred. The things they encourage each other is the lying. Let's touch real quick on the G-Man's recent drama with atheists trying to get him fired from his job. So I had done a hangout about this a couple weeks ago when it first jumped off, and I think that sort of the brief synopsis of it would be that a long time ago, two YouTube atheists, one fairly famous, Alex Botten, had some interaction with the Google Maps business page for the place where G-Man works after G-Man dropped his own employer. And they shouldn't have done it. Everybody agrees. So Alex put down a 1-star rating with no review. The other guy put down a 1-star rating with this elaborate review, which included G-Man's real name. Everybody agrees that's not cool. Alex has changed his rating to 5-star and included a comment like "great place, simply the best" or something like that. The other guy has outright deleted his review. There are other reviews up there that talk about how some of the staff there, not necessarily G-Man, were not good at giving good customer service. These are plausibly actual customers of the store who didn't like the service they got, just like what happens at every other business. But G-Man tells the story that Alex Botten and some other famous atheists, not all of them, but some of them, have put in complaints to the Better Business Bureau. Never happened. It didn't happen even once.
Well, this
and then True Empiricism retells the story that many of these atheists, several famous YouTube atheists, are complaining to the Better Business Bureau and trying to get G-Man fired from his job. And gee, that's just wrong. That's just wrong. So when Zulu hears stuff like this, G-Man retells the story to Zulu, the fake story. G-Man just lies about the actual events that happened. He paints this narrative that all of us people that are on YouTube and chit-chat about this and about that are involved in this effort to destroy G-Man's life by getting him fired from his job. And that is an outright lie. Right, there's two little ratings that were up there. That shouldn't happen, fine, but they got to build it into this whole other thing. So here he'll tell Zulu this, and Zulu will go, "Well, that isn't right. People shouldn't do that." But it's not true.
But the evidence is out there. The evidence is out there. And if Zulu cared, he could check it out, because it's still there. And I've watched that hangout where you and Scientist Sam or whoever it was that was there, you were absolutely investigating the doxing of G-Man's in place of employment. Absolutely. And it's there. So if they cannot see the 4 or 5, 6, 7 people that were absolutely castigating those doxers, then it's more for them, and they are blind to what you were doing. And if they were still saying, hang on,
exemplar of what he was. Sorry.
No. I'm just going to say, if they still then, because it kind of fuels their narrative that they're persecuted, and it's you know, they're righteous and this and that, and you know, that's fine. But the truth is out there that Hogtie had his hangout and he was there explaining this is wrong. Everything was put out there and it's there for everybody to see. And if they want to make their own story, that's up to them. But the truth is out there, like the X-Files said.
Yeah, and of course that's the part of the narrative they love, as you say, is the persecution. I mean, they actually will even go as far to invent. And I mean, in this case, they had the seed there because there were 2 people who left 1-star ratings of an employer several months ago, but they were able to take that and create this elaborate narrative about all of us, not all of us, many of us working together to try to get G-Man fired. And of course, that is simply not true. And then it leaves you in a weird position too, because what happens if you know, let's say G-Man joins the Hangout now, or True Empiricism comes in, and they say, well, this is really not fair that you guys did this. And I say, as I would be correct to say, is, well, that's a lie, or that didn't happen, right? Like, I'm not going to try to defend actions
I think this goes down. I think this goes down to the whole historical narrative of the Christian Church, and I'm going to be really horrible here. The Christian Church, time and time again through history, from the Catholic side to the Protestant side to the Mormons. Don't know about Jehovah's Witnesses, never really said anything on that. They use this excuse of persecution to persecute.
Exactly.
You know?
Yeah. I mean, just a sort of a side note on that is that, like, the ongoing fight in the States over same-sex marriage, because you know, they insist on their right to deny other people rights. They say, well, we have religious freedom here. Okay, well, your religious freedom means you can think how you wish, you can pray how you wish, but it doesn't mean you can act any way you want. And if there's a law, some interpretation of existing laws in the States that say you're not allowed to punch gay people in the face, or you're not allowed to deny them service when you run a you know, publicly accessible storefront, as there are such laws in the States, they say, well, you're denying us our right of religious expression.
Well, it's their right of bigotry. That's what it is, isn't it? It's like, I want to be bigoted and you're stopping me from being a bigot.
Well,
yeah, my right to discriminate.
Yeah.
My right to hate.
Yeah.
And you do, the thing is, you do have those rights. You do have the right to be bigoted. You do have the right to discriminate. You do have the right to hate.
But not if you're not if you're doing a public service though. If you're let's say a hairdresser's and you don't want to cut the hair of a gay person, you can't do that.
Well,
or you're a public defender and you provide a terrible case to a person of color.
Your example's bad there.
No. I'm only saying that
if you're a public defender and you give a bad case
who is gay, who will cut someone's hair, who's gay.
Wow. Listen, you're absolutely right. Hang on, wait a minute. Well, a hairdresser's in the UK would probably have 75% gay. Yeah.
Yeah. See, bad example. Bad example.
No. I'm only saying that. I'm only saying that because there's a hairdresser's opening up across the road from my house. That's why I'm thinking.
Or saying the judge is going to give the wrong opinion because he's Mexican.
In the UK, that's wrong because you have hairdressers and you have barbers shops.
No,
so a barber shop is like a West Indian hairdresser in America.
No, not in Birmingham, Dross. No. You've got very flamboyant unisex salons here.
Oh yeah,
and they're going for it. Yeah. It's all out there.
Well, I accept your correction. Yeah, I accept your correction, Blue. Like when I said you have the right to be a bigot, you have the right to discriminate, you have the right to hate. I should put asterisk by the word discriminate, because there are circumstances where you yield your right to discriminate. There are certain engagements you get into. So, for example, when you open a public storefront, whether it's for hairdressing or barbershop or bakery or whatever. Yeah, or if you take a public position, like you're the
we had didn't Dross correct me, because you are, you know.
Oh, you're talking about Rees-Mogg, aren't you?
No. Rees-Mogg can go. Rees-Mogg can go and have 20 children. That's up to him. He can go and, do you know what I mean? But I'm just thinking of the a few years ago there was a B&B, a bed and breakfast owner.
Oh yes.
Remember that one? And they didn't want to have. It was a gay couple, but it was on the grounds that they weren't married.
Mm.
But now that gay people can be married, I don't know what came of it. I mean, obviously it's finished and that's done and dusted, but it's like back in the day, a B&B owner didn't want to have a same-sex couple, not because they were gay, but because they were not married.
But Thalo, would that also have extended to a heterosexual couple, a man and a woman showing up who were not married?
And I think they probably tried to spin it like it was.
Yeah.
That was the thing. But I don't think it actually was. I think it was because they were gay. But now that we can have gay people married in this country, I don't know what would have come of that.
Well, I'd be wondering, the larger legal question around that would be whether or not a B&B would be in a position where they're free to discriminate. So again, I don't necessarily want to retread the whole discussion, but it's interesting. But the idea that the freedom to contract, this is a common law principle, freedom to contract, the government can't compel you or prevent you from entering into contracts except where there are reasonable limits to that freedom to contract. So if you do by commission work, so if you're a painter or a baker or whatever, and people can commission you to do a painting or do their wedding cake for them or their wedding photos or whatever, you can imagine a scenario where somebody agrees to do it. They meet the bride or something, and then they say, yeah, I'll quite happily take your wedding photos. And then they later meet the husband,
or the bride. Yeah.
Yeah. Turns out the guy's black, and he goes, I'm sorry, I can't do your wedding photos because I'm an artist, and mixed race couples don't inspire my muse.
I don't think in the UK that would fly. I think.
Well, the guy might be a jerk, but it might be well within his rights to hold that opinion and to react that way, because you can't force people to enter into certain contracts because there's some social policy around it. The difference would be when you have a storefront, and I'd use this example with the whole Sweet Cakes by Melissa thing, that if they said, well, look, if they ran a by commission, where you commission them as cake artists to do your wedding cake, and they simply weren't inspired by the couple, they could tell you right to your face, we don't do mixed race couples, we don't do same-sex couples, because that doesn't inspire my muse. And they would totally get away with it because they can't be compelled to do it. In the same way that if I owned a private fishing pond and I said, well, I don't like black people fishing in my private fishing pond.
I don't know. Check what does. Let's see what Dross says, because Dross is far more knowledgeable about things than I am.
I won't go that far, Thalo.
Well, kind of.
But yeah, I mean, legally speaking, I've owned my own company, and I have the rights to provide services to whoever I want. I don't have to give a reason if I want to or if I don't want to. It's about the only time that it becomes an issue is where you can prove discrimination.
No, hold on. Let's separate that issue. And this happens with anytime you start talking about application of law, you always slip in. There's a potential for slipping into this confounding of what the law would dictate under.
Yeah, that sounded incredibly ambiguous. He can
versus what can be demonstrated. So, for example, if I say, well, if I drive down Highway 16 at 100 miles an hour, would I get a ticket, or should I? Would that cost me money? Well, I mean, in principle, you're not allowed to do that. But the question is, would you be caught? Would there be sufficient evidence? Yeah. Would the Crown be able to proceed with prosecution? So those are two very, very different issues. So I'm saying that let's say that the person even outright declared, I'm sorry, I'm not taking your wedding photos because I don't do photos for mixed race couples. And my understanding is that would be acceptable, even if it could be clearly demonstrated that was the grounds he did it.
But that confuses me, and maybe that's because I'm too sort of, I don't know what, liberal. I don't know what. That's not a good enough reason, is it? I don't take photos for mixed race couples.
But you don't need a reason.
It depends. In the UK, it depends. Say, for instance, I went to Hogg and I say, Hogg, I want you to take pictures of my wedding. I don't care if they're badly framed or out of focus. I just want you to do it. And Hogg goes, yep, no problem at all. We basically then enter into contracts. Now, now, if he then says, I'm not going to deliver this contract, I'm not going to deliver my agreements based on the fact that I'm marrying another man, that's when I can then sue him because I have now suffered loss.
Okay, right, but hold on a sec. Now we got to divide these two issues here. If I've accepted the contract and then I later repudiate, that's a breach, and a breach by repudiation. So I could suffer a loss, and that was one of the factors that came in with Sweet Cakes, was that they had accepted the contract and then later told them, oh, you're marrying a woman, so now I'm not doing it. So that was a repudiation. Right there, they are responsible for the costs to the other party because of their breach by repudiation. But there's an additional question then: is that a human rights violation? Right? No, because remember, if I repudiated just by saying, like, so you hire me to do something, take your photos or whatever, and then I say, oh no, it turns out I'm busy that weekend, I don't want to do it now. I'm not going to do it. So I've repudiated. You don't have to scramble to find somebody else. I would be responsible for those costs, even if it weren't a human rights violation. So really the question then is can a person say, no, I'm not going to do it because you're black or because you're gay? And it's my understanding and my position that this is reasonable, that people should be able to say, no, I don't take wedding photos for black people, or I don't take wedding photos for same-sex couples. I think that's well within your rights.
But
Thalo first, and then
okay. So you would think it was okay for somebody to say, I don't take wedding photos for mixed race weddings, but
yes, I think it's both. Sorry, I think it's both.
Yeah, and everyone would know that guy was a racist douchebag.
I think it should be okay, and I do think it is under the law. It is okay. Yes.
But
both of those things.
What would
to advertise your racism? Yes.
But what would their reason being? How could they justify it? They're racist.
They don't need a reason. I think Pseudo wanted to chime in.
The picture's going to be ugly.
Okay, all right. To use the example of photographer. Okay.
I was going to say, from the UK position, I can refuse service to anybody, and I don't need to give any reason.
All right.
Is that true, Dross? I mean,
that's incredibly ambiguous, because you said if they can prove it's discrimination, you would get in trouble. But wouldn't that be a reason?
I don't think even discrimination would fall under that, because
then I'm confused by
I
your
don't know.
The problem I have is under the employment law, I can't discriminate. So within my company, I can't discriminate. I can't do any of that. That's fine.
But outside of it,
external to my company, I can basically decide to work with you or not for whatever petty reason I want, because it's a job, it's not a requirement.
But sorry, educate me. If you took a job from a say from a white man to do his photos, and then you decided because he was marrying a black woman, you didn't want to do it, you can't pull out from that, can you?
Well,
he would have had to have done that before he entered in the contract. He would have been who are you marrying? Let me see her first before I sign these papers.
So just for clarity, just because we sort of go into these other issues about accepting a contract and then repudiating, or whether or not you can prove that the stated reason was actually the reason, let's really sharply focus it on the scenario where you don't accept the contract and you turn down the contract on the express grounds that I'm a bigot. I'm not doing your mixed race photos. I'm not even going to accept the contract. So let's focus on that. Dress, you're saying that you think you would have no problem with that.
I think, though, I'm reading 3 different laws at the moment. So I'm now reading the Sex Discrimination Law and the Race Discrimination Act in the UK.
Because that's the thing.
If I went into a shop, which is a private space opened to the public, and they refused to serve me on race or religion, so you turn around and said, I ain't serving you, you is black, then I can. Sorry.
Yeah, I like how racists have bad grammar too.
So that's the Ali
That's
G.
how you can tell.
Oh, okay, yeah, right.
Sacha Baron
Barack
Cohen.
Obama exists.
Yeah, who's a Jew, by the
for
way.
that
But
reason,
anyway,
who for that reason, yeah, definitely. Then I've got recourse under the law because I've now been discriminated in what is in a public space. Now, if I'm offering a service out to someone and I decide not to provide that service through race or religion or sexuality, then I have a problem because that's the distinction. Yeah. And I think I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
I'm much better on contract law than I am on race law. So I know in contract law it's all my choice, but obviously there are other things.
Can I interject now?
Please do, yeah.
All right. What about that case of that pizza place that someone went to cater their wedding, and then the pizza place refused? Not on the grounds that it was a gay wedding, but rather because they're not caterers.
I don't know.
This happened around the same time as that wedding cake issue years ago.
Yeah.
The thing was, the pizza restaurant in question could not fill the order. They don't cater. They do delivery of pizzas to people's homes, not like hundreds of pizzas to a place and set them up and serve them. They're not that kind of restaurant. They don't have the equipment.
Yeah. Well, a lot of times
but it became they were denied because it was a gay wedding. No,
yeah,
it's because
you
got the wrong kind of restaurant.
Yeah, a lot of times human rights claims, a lot of times they come down to questions of fact. And that's why I kind of want to avoid that. I'll give you one quick example.
Let's go back to your photographer example here.
Okay.
If the photographer does not have the correct lenses,
I know, but we were trying to
avoid... they take of someone with dark skin is going to look crappy.
Yeah, well, okay. We're trying to set aside the situation where somebody offers a different excuse. Actually, I'm derailing into that anyway. There's a somewhat famous case that actually happened right near where I live. And it's funny because it was an employee, a cook at the cafeteria at the law courts building, where he ultimately filed suit against the operator of that law courts building. So a weird coincidence there. But what had happened was he'd worked there for a few years, and he was an okay employee. There's no really big issues with him, but he had a couple of little problems here and there, but not somebody you would expect to terminate. But his wife was pregnant. He went in and asked about whether he wanted to take some time off around the time of the birth, and he was told, well, there was a form that he had to fill out in order to, human resources, whatever, get this parental leave, as is permissible in Alberta. And of course, in most jurisdictions, including Alberta, you get protection from being fired as soon as you have notified them that you're going to have a baby, your wife's having a baby, you're going to adopt a kid, whatever. You qualify for parental leave. You are not allowed to be fired for making such a request. And you're given your leave and you're guaranteed your job back when you come back. That's just how that works. They ended up firing him anyway. Now, in the meantime, he didn't get this form, and he was still at work. And one day, one of the other employees who was there came back and told him, hey, this turkey that you served is undercooked, and it was pink. So they looked into it and they found out he wasn't filling out the logs. He wasn't doing all the steps that are required to make sure that when he serves turkey, that he's not going to poison people with it. So they looked and said, oh, no, we can't have this. You're fired. So he of course sued on the grounds that, well, he had this protection from being fired because he applied for this leave. Well, what ended up happening was there was a big dispute over whether or not he'd actually applied for the leave, because he told them that he wanted leave, but there was a form he was supposed to fill out and he hadn't filled out the form yet. The judge ruled that the fact that he asked for the form is a form of asking for leave. They just needed to cross the I's and dot the T's. So that issue's off the table. But then the question is, do you get absolute protection from being fired? They had to look at the issue of, okay, well, they say they fired him because of the undercooked turkey, and he's claiming that they fired him actually because of that he was asking for leave. So they're claiming that they had this good reason to fire him, and he was claiming that they had a reason that was illegal. And it comes down to a matter of fact. So I'm just using that as an example of, let's try to set aside these issues of where there may be a different reason why they fired him. I think what Druss was saying actually...
What happened in the case?
Oh, he lost. He lost because
good. Okay. Good.
Yeah.
Good. Okay.
Yeah,
Sorry.
because they
Just
were
needed to know.
the employer was able to successfully demonstrate that they had good grounds to fire him, whether or not he had protection
By
from
being
being
an
fired for these
incompetent
other
person.
grounds. Right. Yeah, that it was a significant breach of his duties, yeah. So yeah, that's
His
why.
job.
Yeah. So I forgot the expression, duty, good faith, and I forgot the other term is, but whatever, it doesn't matter. So he was, yeah, he was fired for that, and that's fine. So again, we want to sort of set aside these situations where
it's a duty of care
over the facts of it. So let's go. I think Druss is exactly on the right track when we say, if you ask me to do something and I tell you straight out, no, I'm not even going to take on that contract because you're gay or because you're black. I'm saying the presumption is, and further I'm saying the presumption ought to be, I do think society should function this way, and it's my belief that it does. The presumption is you are free to discriminate, even if you declare straight out, I'm not doing this because you're black, or I'm not doing this because you're gay, or whatever else. That's the presumption. Druss is pointing out some examples. I've heard him say 2 already, where that presumption is rebuttable and successfully rebutted. So, for example, if I'm an employer and I hire somebody to do a job, and then my operation expands, I need to hire a second person to do exactly that same job at a different machine or whatever, and I tell the second person who applies, I'm not hiring you because you're black. Right?
I must be
now I'm in trouble.
I must be extremely naive to think that that's a valid enough reason.
But that's my point. There isn't a valid reason. There doesn't need to be a valid reason. In my freedom to contract,
but that's not. But that's not a valid reason. So how can somebody think that it is to say that you can do that?
But you don't need. That's the thing. You don't need a valid reason. When the whole principle of freedom to contract is that you can choose your contracts with whim and caprice. A phrase I borrow from the Alberta Court of Appeals.
In the UK, maybe in Canada, maybe, I don't know. But please.
Sorry, when I use the expression, your freedom to contract.
What you say, it's not about what you don't say. Yeah, that's what you're held accountable for what you say. And I'll give you a really good example. You get stopped for speeding, or you get stopped by the police, and the policeman goes, "You're going a bit fast, weren't you?" And you go, "Yeah, I was." Now you're screwed. Yep. Now you have entered in information that substantiates their claim.
No, again, I'm not. I don't want, because I think that the interesting issue here, it isn't about evidentiary matters, about what can be proven or what isn't. I'm saying, let's say somebody puts it on the table. So let's say that it's perfectly clear what their reasons were. So I'm saying that somebody actually says, I'm not going to take your wedding photos because you're same sex. Versus
in the UK, you would have, that would be a discrimination case.
I don't think you would, if you're a by commission photographer, or it's just a hobby thing you do on the weekend. I don't think you would have any problems with it at all, either in the UK or Canada. So, for example, when I talk about when I use this expression "freedom to contract," and when I say that the Alberta Court of Appeals use the expression that you're free to act with whim and caprice, when I say, well, that's the expression used for it here. Keep in mind, my whole country, we didn't start by writing our own laws. When we got here, we just went, okay, fuck it, we'll just whatever they're doing in England. We'll just use their laws. We'll just, the whole United Kingdom code. It's just essentially where we started. So the expression "whim and caprice" isn't even ours. That's your law. So I'm telling you that your common law traditions are that people are free as individuals, or even as a corporation. You are free. The presumption is that you are free to choose your contracts with people with whim and caprice, even on racial grounds. You don't need a good reason. I don't need to like the color of your shoes. I don't need to like the color of your skin. I don't need to like who you sleep with. I'm allowed to bail on those contracts, or sorry, not enter into contracts based on any grounds. Good grounds, bad grounds, or no grounds. That's my position.
Well, that's just not the case. Actually, I don't think. I kind of agree that it should be, but even if it's the basis of law, law is amended infinite times. Okay. It might say that at the base, but amended over here to say, well, actually, you can't do it like this, and actually.
Yeah. Well, there are other things, other circumstances that come into play where you surrender bits of your freedom to contract. So Druss was giving the example before about hiring an employee. If I had an employee, so I could turn down the whole wedding photographer gig and just tell this couple, no, you're mixed race, I'm not doing it. But then if I'm running this my little wedding photographer company and I'm going to hire employees now, and I tell an employee, I do the same thing to an employee, and I say, hey, I'm not going to hire you because you're a lesbian. I don't hire lesbians. Now I've committed a human rights violation, because once you become an employer in a jurisdiction where there is employment law, you adopt a responsibility, the same responsibility that the government has by way of, in our case, the Charter of Rights and Freedoms, the same way that the government has a constitutional responsibility to respect people's civil rights. Once you become an employer within that statutory framework, you now adopt the responsibility to respect civil rights. Second, when you open up a storefront on a public street and you make a publicly accessible business, in exchange for that consideration of them providing you a sidewalk and water service and the fire department, you now also adopt the responsibility to treat your customers on a take them as they come basis, respecting all civil rights. Those are the two things. Yeah. So that's why when you hear well, these people refuse to bake this cake for somebody, so they got in shit for it. That's the reason, is because not because people are compelled to respect other people's skin colors or sexual orientations. It's because you adopt that responsibility when you become an employer, when you become an open operator of a publicly accessible business.
But I want to go.
Hold on, real quick, please. Is because if you discriminate against them, if multiple people discriminate against them, and it's hard for them to get jobs, that means, like mathematically, that some of them will be in poverty. And for us people that give a shit, we don't fucking like that. Basically, is how it is.
You have no legislated or constitutional responsibility to give a shit about somebody else's poverty. Sorry, Thalo, you were going to say.
No.
But
no,
we kind of do legislatively. If we make it to where you can't discriminate against people, against hiring people based on against things they can't control, then yes, you are legally required to give a shit about them in a little slight sense.
So, Thalo, were you going to react to the point about?
No. I was going to go back, just taking it back even further than that, and it's like, well, what justification can somebody have between a mixed race marriage? And it's not about legislation and about rights and this, that, and the other, but it's like pragmatically, if somebody's saying, I'm not going to bake a cake for you because your husband is white and you are black, and I don't agree with that, I just can't.
They're brainwashed. They're racist and stupid.
Easy with interrupting.
Sorry. I apologize for the language. I mean, I just know people in everybody around me. I live in Arizona. Literally everybody around me literally believes some of these things are ontologically true, and it's eventually something you have to accept.
I always come from like a pragmatist point of view. It's like, well, you think this, well, how does it work with that? How do we, okay, so you think this, so how do we get past it? How do we make it work if you have this ideal? And I can't, in the UK, again, Dross, I refer to you, Dross, it's not, I don't think it's a thing. Is it a thing anymore? Mixed race relationships? It's not. Is it? It's not even a.
Not really. Not unless
no,
you go to.
Absolutely.
It really is.
It is not a hang up. I think maybe if we go, what are we in now? 2017. If we go back about maybe 30 years. Yes. Well, yeah, 40 years. It's 70s, a hang up.
80s, yeah, 70s, early 80s. It was kind of.
You want me to show you right outside my window? Right outside my window, there is a guy with a swastika tattooed on his chest.
Well,
a guy across the street. A guy across the street with a black fist tattooed on his chest. And I live in an apartment complex. Hugging? It's not across. It's across a pebble walkway. This is a shared garden.
Are they hugging?
No, they are yelling
at
each other. The people right under me are Latino. And like are always like shuddering and keeping to themselves. Like in America, it gets really, really bad. I know hundreds.
We agree. Racism is bad. I see Dress has a Dress has shared a link in the. Actually, you know what? I'm going to copy that out. Dress has shared a link inside here, which is this one, and it's a policy page from the Law Society. Is this a national or federal law society there?
This is the UK Law Society.
Government. Yeah, it's a government one because it's got org.
So
yeah.
Like
it's
my
a
whole
government.
family, everybody.
Let me
Hold on a
just
second.
say.
Just on a clarifying question. Okay, who's the law? Okay, we have the Law Society of Alberta. We have the Saskatchewan Law Society. We have different one for each province. You just have the Law Society. Is like the whole. Okay.
We're not a big country.
If it's .org.
Hog tight. All of the UK fits in southwestern Ontario.
Yeah,
how big of a
we're quite small. We are. Yeah.
Okay, look up the Southern Poverty Law Center.
Okay, I just wanted to clarify it. So okay, go ahead. What was your point though, Dress, of sharing it? So the page you've shared, which I've posted in the live chat outside.
So what this actually does is gives reasonable reasons to refuse contract, and there are now unreasonable reasons under European law to refuse contract, and they are based on race, religion, and sexuality. So I can't refuse on the basis of that. So if I had that mentality and I wasn't an idiot, then I would find another excuse not to provide that service.
And I'm sure that kind of thing happens all the time, where somebody just says, like where you have, Trump.
Can I just say,
Donald Trump and his just real quick, Donald Trump and his dad actually both been in trouble for this, where they wouldn't rent to black tenants, but they wouldn't go and say, well, we don't rent to black people. They would say, well, you didn't pass the background check.
Yeah, I was just going to say, if I wanted a gay cake made, in where I'm from, I probably wouldn't go to a Muslim cake maker, because that's where I'm from. You just wouldn't. I just wouldn't, because they may refuse. Do you see?
Well, I think also that there's a thing in a lot of British society about politeness.
Yes.
So we don't like putting people into uncomfortable situations.
Putting them out. You don't want to put people out. Absolutely. So you would go to a cake maker that you know would make you a cake.
Yeah. Sorry, I do want to address. So, Dress, like, what was your point when you posted this? What are you trying to draw our attention to here?
Basically, what I'm trying to say is that within the EU, there is not the same freedom of refusal to contract as there used to be. So this is legal statute that's come out in sort of like the last 20 years. And it's about a code of conduct about how you engage to really stop discrimination, or at least mean that there is a recourse for people who've been discriminated against.
Okay, well, first off, I'm not denying that it is possible that there may be tighter restrictions on refusing service, even for by contract type work in the UK. That I mean, while our laws were imported from yours, I mean, we've gone down different paths. So it might be the case that and also you have that interaction with the EU. So there had to be some sort of continent-wide standards that were created. I do want to point out though that the specific page that you've referred us to is from the Office of the Ombudsman, where people would be complaining about legal services that they received, or in this case didn't receive. So one of the issues that happens, I remember I mentioned that I used the term by commission, and I don't mean commission as like you're a salesman on commission, you get 10% of what you sell.
No, as in someone's been commissioned to do something.
Yeah, it means an appointment. So you might commission an artist to make a statue. That's you issuing a commission. You're saying, I'm commissioning this artist to make a statue for me. When it comes to professional practice, you have the weirdness of that there's a commission. The party that commissions you is actually the government. So all lawyers receive a commission to practice law by the government, and as soon as you do that, same thing for doctors, right? Doctors are not allowed to turn away patients unless they have grounds to do so. And this
This
page,
isn't illegal. It's about any contract, any type of company, any type of organization.
This thing on the refusing to provide a service thing, I think this actually refers to refusing to provide legal services under your commission as a barrister or solicitor in the UK. I don't think this refers to refusing to bake a cake for somebody or take their wedding photos.
I'll double check that.
It's the ombudsman's office.
It is an ombudsman, and that would be quite reasonable.
Yeah, but nonetheless, I'm not saying that it's not possible. But I hope.
And it's actually talking about SRA Code of Conduct 2011. That's legal.
Yeah. So this would not enjoin or restrict the behavior of people who bake cakes or take wedding photos. Who's I going to apologize here in the live chat? Nemo Utopian, who apparently several minutes ago was driven crazy by my refusal to launch into a description. Or is it here? It would help if you clarify the difference between a public business and a private contract. I hope you do see. We eventually did get to that point. So
I think it's completely fatuous, but I do think that Druss would agree with that the English would, or the British, as you are, Druss, that you would. You're Scottish. But we probably wouldn't go for a contract that was going to antagonize. Do you know what I mean? We would go for somebody that we know would fulfill the contract as being British. We wouldn't want to.
Yeah, as a private individual, why would you want to go do that?
I was trying to get across.
Yeah, and I think, but then I guess, what do you think about this in terms of how you want your society to function? Like, what if it turns out that you have some like totally insane racist, Nazi whatever bakery down the street, and then you say, well, that's fine that he's doing that. But do you know what it is though? It's like I wouldn't want to
go into contract with the Nazi to make me a bar mitzvah cake. It's like I wouldn't say make me a bar mitzvah cake for my nephew's bar mitzvah, and they go, fuck you, Jew. I wouldn't. Excuse me.
Cake service.
I would not. Sorry, I need to stop because my husband's going to tell me to stop swearing. I would. I would not enter.
I just have to ask you one question quickly.
Second time in this hangout.
Is the Nazi bakery the best deal in town?
No, exactly.
Cakes by Stormfront.
That's right. I would not want
cake and Blitzen.
No, I would not.
Blitz cake.
Okay, but then,
Blue,
how would you wish to address it though? How would you wish to make your community a better place? How would you wish to make your let's say that there is somebody who's a racist there and they're breaking the law by doing
that. Nobody goes to that bakery. So I want a bar mitzvah cake for my nephew, and everybody wants a bar mitzvah cake for their nephews or a bat mitzvah cake for their nieces, and nobody would go to that bakery. And they would
I think that the effort
out of business. They would go out of business, but it's not what you do, because I don't know.
Yeah, well, there are people, and I also, by the way, I don't agree with this. I think that I'm going to explain the situation. I'm going to give the justification for it, but to avoid confusion, I'm going to say up front, I don't think people should be doing this, and I can explain why. But there are people who say, well, look at what happened to Sweet Cakes by Melissa. Right, the woman went in, arranged a contract, and then they found out she was marrying another woman. So then they broke contract, and then now they sued and they got a bunch of money. So I'm going to go into a Muslim bakery, and this had happened in the States. And they said, yeah, me and my boyfriend are getting married, and we want you to do a thing. No, we don't do our gay thing.
No. I would not encourage you to antagonize a particular kind of bakery to say, make me do you know what I mean? A bris cake, and you're not going to fulfill that because it's for a circumcision. I'm not going to do that. I'm going to go for a bris family-friendly bakery.
I know. Sorry, what I'm asking about those, do you not think that there's an interest if you find out that, okay, so we found out, we found out about Sweet Cakes by Melissa because accidentally,
so I wouldn't go to that bakery, and I would hope they lose business. That's the only way. That's my passive aggressive approach.
Okay, but what if it's actually illegal? I mean, we're agreeing that once you have a storefront, it is actually illegal to engage in that sort of discrimination. So we found out about Sweet Cakes by Melissa because a lesbian had gone in. She had been a customer of the place before, had even successfully arranged wedding catering, and then now for her own wedding. So that's how we found out about it. And the reason that this ends up in the courts, in that case a tribunal, was because she and her partner put forward a human rights claim.
Of course, good for her.
They accidentally got into a contract with a place that, had they known this, they wouldn't have gone to. But what would you? So, does it bother you that there are other businesses out there that we haven't even heard about, but they would discriminate given half a chance? Do you think that should be done about that?
I think that it would. That when it comes up, that's when it's dealt with. Because how do you know? How do you know otherwise? I want to make a bar mitzvah cake for my nephew and they don't want to do it. How do we know that they don't want to do it? Because they're not going to advertise, we don't cater for Jews. Do you know what I mean? How do we know? But once they say, I cannot, in all good conscience, cater for a bar mitzvah because it goes against my sincerely held beliefs of Christianity, then that's when the flag goes up, and that's when I go to town on you. Do you see?
Yeah. Well,
because you can't flag it up. You know, all the bakeries can't flag up their discrimination, but once they bring it up, that's when they show themselves. That's when they show their true colours, and that's when you can go to town on them.
You know what's funny? I had somebody in a previous hangout on this topic. I had somebody suggest that what stores should do, they should be free to discriminate, but in order to get a permit to discriminate, they have to put in the front window of the store in prominent lettering, we don't serve gays, we don't serve blacks, whatever it is that they don't like doing, so that all the sensible people would just avoid them.
No, awful. I don't know.
It's funny. Here in the States, they put a sign that says, "We reserve the right to refuse service to anyone."
And that
did not have it.
Yeah, well, you know what? Those things are as effective as putting up a sign that says, "Our policy is you break it, you buy it." I mean, people can't just put up a sign that permits them to do something that's outside the law.
But that's the thing. If you break it, you buy it. That's anybody. But if you're black and you break it, we're going to go after you.
There's no such thing as you break it, you buy it. That's not even a thing.
No, of course. But it's like if you're black and you break it, you pay for it. If you're white and you break it, you don't pay for it. It's awful.
We'll just blame it on the next black guy that comes in.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm sure there are places in the world. Yeah.
So I just posted a piece of legislation, Hogtie, because I know you like your legislation. So Section 29 of the Equalities Act.
Where the hell does this thing end?
Is what would cover contractor in the UK.
That is an awful lot of.
No, Hogtie didn't type this. That's not an awful lot.
Well, you know what? I am actually looking at the clock too. I do think we should kind of bring it in for landing here pretty soon. I mean, all interesting topics on here. I think there was only one thing that was on my mind that we didn't get to, but that's okay. That's fine. Okay, so my question addressed. So yeah, what you give is Section 29 of something on provision of services, and it I assume it lists reasons of grounds for discriminating or not discriminating. My question would be, there's the link at the bottom. The question would be, I do think we're going to leave this topic here fairly quickly, but one of the things that you need to be careful about when you see some piece of legislation like this is to then say, well, why is this piece of legislation governing or enjoining on my conduct? And you know, that's here, I'll post it here in the thing. Do you know what I mean?
Can I just say something?
Sorry, let me try this. For example, let's say that, so for example, there's a service I provide. I sometimes tie children's shoes, right? But that's because I'm around kids and they need their shoes tied. There's no piece of legislation that says I have to tie every pair of shoes that gets put in front of my face, right? So what I'm saying is that there may be a piece of legislation that talks about what circumstances you can refuse to provide service or you must provide service, and that piece of legislation applies to certain people. So my question to you, as you share that legislation, why would this legislation be enjoining or governing for my conduct?
Okay, so in this particular, I'll keep this really short and to the point, just not to annoy them. Basically, if you're just doing that as a voluntary service, then you can tie whoever shoes you want. I kind of agree with that from a legal standpoint. If you're advertising the service in any way, shape, or form, and creating a business is a form of advertisement, you're saying that you're there to do business.
Why can't you tie everybody's shoes though? Sorry.
Then you can't refuse to tie Thalo's shoes because she's Jewish.
That's
so
right.
you could refuse
tie my shoes, man. Tie them.
You could refuse to tie her shoelaces because she doesn't have any.
Ah.
Wait a minute. Wait a second, though. But Druss, Hogtie's business was tying children's shoes.
Well, Sailor's a child. She can't be more than 14.
No.
I'm a child of I'm a child of the universe. I'm a child of the universe.
In this mental
shoes for children.
Yeah,
right.
In this hypothetical example, Thalo is a child.
Okay. Okay, you're right there. But if as an adult,
I am my mother's child.
Shoes, you don't tie those.
No, because that's outside. That's outside the terms of the service that you offer. But there's nothing in that.
Yeah.
That is discriminated, except in the UK where you can't discriminate against age, but this is a service that is particularly directed to children.
Yeah.
So you wouldn't be a children's doctor for OAPs, for instance.
Yeah. Well, okay. Well, let's wrap it up on this point, and so we'll see if we have another thing. I did kind of want to limit myself to only going to noon, but just to sort of close that through. Where I am.
Oh, wow.
Which I think is 8 o'clock.
No, it's 20 past 7.
7 o'clock, yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
So people think that you don't have the right to discriminate, and I'm saying that really in law, and I think it's also good practice, people are free to discriminate on whatever basis they want. And this idea that, so for example, if somebody sees me tie my kids' shoes, because that's one of the services I offer the world, namely I tie my kids' shoes, you can't then just come up to me and say, well, you have to tie my kids' shoes. You can't refuse that, right?
But is that a contract with the world, though? That's a contract between you and your family, not a contract with.
That's the distinction I think we're trying to bring out here. Is that the idea that you're somehow obligated to worry about equality or protect other people's civil rights or provide them service, that obligation doesn't exist automatically. It's created because of some other contract you enter. You're entering into.
Sorry, Hogtie. It's weird because if you think that you see a child that, let's just say, needs their shoes tying, as a parent of another child, of your own child, don't you feel obligated to look after even in a limited sense to check another child?
Yeah. Well, again,
wait a minute. When you're in the street and you see a child by themselves, you're kind of like thinking, well, who's responsible for that child? You're kind of looking around. You're thinking, hang on a minute, who's that child with? Do you know what I mean? In the supermarket, you're thinking, hang on a minute, that kid's by themselves. It's a universal. It's a universal job that parents give themselves, if you're a decent person, to think that, I would wish that for somebody else to look at my child. So you look at other children like that. You think, where's that child going? Yeah. Who's looking after that child?
And I get that. I mean, with the wrinkle too, that you got to be careful, especially middle-aged male. You don't go up and be real helpful to other people's kids. But I know what you mean. I do feel that drive. I know I've been in a store where a kid's been lost, and I've approached the kid, and I went, you seem upset. Is everything okay? What's going on, buddy? And then they say, my parents are gone. Yeah. Then I'll go, yeah, exactly. And I'll say, well, you know what? Let's go find one of the staff here, and they'll call your parents over PA, right? And you got to be sort of careful with those things.
That's that's maybe not an adult thing, but I think it's definitely a parent thing.
Right.
I don't.
But I'm saying, okay. And by the way, I do also tie other kids' shoes. We go, we do skating here. So, and there's an outdoor rink. I'm obviously not this month, but soon there will be an outdoor rink. And I volunteer at the school. And in that case, I have to take the kids as they come. I can't just tie my own kids' skates and then tie my kids' friends' skates and then look and say, oh, the little Kenyan kid is dark skinned, so I'm not tying her skates.
No, of course, because you do it because you know it's the right thing to do. It's like
okay. Aside from that, no, and I agree with you. I get the whole "it's the right thing to do" thing. The thing is, once I go and I'm volunteering for the school, I create all sorts of legal problems when I don't participate in the school's policy, and that is the volunteers tie all the kids' skates. But what I'm asking Blue is, and again, I sort of want to move off this topic or possibly even end the hangout. If anybody wants to start a new hangout, please message me and we'll announce it and get the audience kind of moved over that way. But I'm saying, do you want to live in a world where I know you don't want to live in a world where I'm a bigot. I get that. But do you want to live in a world where I would suffer criminal penalties or even financial penalties because I'm a bigot? If I decide I'm not going to, like, okay, so there's some kids on the street. Like, let's say that situation you're talking about, a kid falls down, their shoe comes untied and the kid falls down, they cry a little bit. I go over and I console the kid and I tie their shoe, and then the kid feels better and they wander off. The next day I'm walking on the same street, the exact same thing happens, except it's a kid that is raised by two mommies. So I just walk past that kid. Do you want to live in a world where I would suffer financial or criminal jeopardy
for not acting, for not
acting?
That's like Seinfeld, isn't it? The last episode of Seinfeld. It's like being responsible for not intervening in a crime or in a
but I'm dialing it up enough. It's not just that they didn't want to be helpful. Let's say I want to be helpful to the white kids that have straight parents, but I don't want to be helpful to anybody else. Do you want to live in a world where I am helpful to some people, I choose to be helpful to some people, and I have this horrendous grounds for doing so? Do you want to live in a world where I'd be punished in some way for being that way?
I would not like you to think like that. I would like you to.
That's the way the world is. There are lots of people.
Do you know what I mean? I know. A whole time. I'm so sorry. I've got no answer.
Where you could be forced to be re-educated.
Yeah, I can't say that I would like that person to be like hung, drawn, and quartered because they don't help the gay kid because he's being beaten up for being gay. It's awful, isn't it? It's
the problem is the individual has rights. You have the right for self-determination, self-decision making. I can disagree with your decisions, yeah, and I can believe that they're wrong, but I don't think that that's the type of thing that you've got to stop where you legislate for people's
actions. But you
actions.
also apparently have the right to brainwash your children into thinking black people aren't human beings.
I have huge problems with that. Huge problems with that.
Yeah,
but just one question, just to answer the question. In my view, I wish people didn't have that kind of attitude. There are lots of people that have that attitude, that you can help this person or that person. But my view is I would not want to live in a country or a community where people would be punished simply for being bigots, simply for having the wrong attitudes about who to help. In my view, people should be punished for failing to care when they have a duty to care. But they should never be punished for failing to care when no such duty exists. And unfortunately, that means that we have to let people be apply their care to people with, as I say, borrowing the phrase, with whim and caprice, and that's the way it goes.
In my group, or put in my phrase,
and I think it caused plenty of
in
problems.
every group there are arseholes.
Arseholes.
Yeah. Maybe we should. That's what it should be. Just be a separate law for you just get a ticket for being an asshole. That's a society I might want to live in.
No.
We got to.
That's the same thing.
It's not. It's not asshole. It's arsehole.
But you just said get a ticket for being an asshole.
No.
That's
say aluminum.
Say arse. Listen.
Aluminium.
Shut up, pseudo. Say arsehole. Arse.
Arsehole.
That's right.
Arsehole.
Arsehole.
Aluminium.
That's right.
I got it.
Simply enunciate vowel sounds, and you'll sound like you're speaking English.
Another one. Bollocks.
Bollocks.
That's it. That was
I don't want to get this. Let's wrap up. Let's wrap up on this point. It'll be kind of a funny point for the Canadians will like it. As you know, Canadians don't have an accent.
Not much.
Not at all.
Much.
Not at all. And
us Americans,
but we're told that we have an accent. I always find that weird. And there's a comedian here. I would say not Sean Majumber.
You do.
Russell Peters, who does a lot of different accents in his thing, and he says it's funny when he does these accents because Canadians think they don't have an accent, and he says, I look for where my kids are because I'm going to swear here. He says, absolutely, there's a recognized Canadian accent when you swear. He says, you don't think you have an accent? Listen to this. Listen to how you guys swear. Every one of you sound like a donkey when you swear. He goes, what is he talking about? He goes, fuck off. And every Canadian does it. If you say something stupid, every Canadian will go, asshole. Like that. It's always got that same intonation as the donkey.
It's very donkeyish, yeah.
It is. Fuck off. But on that note, I gotta pull the.
No, just before you end it.
He got a good laugh. Let him go.
Wait. What's the worst Canadian swear that you have?
You're an American.
If you
Canadian one.
Yes, that's what you say to another Canadian.
Tell them that they. If you're it's the English version of it. If you tell somebody you're acting like a person from Newfoundland, that's probably no. That's terrible. That's terrible. I'm gonna get nailed about that. No, the worst Canadian swear.
How'd you confuse a Newfoundlander?
I think the C word.
Newfoundlander.
C word. The C word.
The C
terrible.
Word. The C word's pretty bad. I don't know. Pseudo, you got one? What's the worst? And we certainly don't say things that are racially charged, like the N word as well. I mean, that's not even really part of our culture to do that.
No,
but we just like that. I don't know. I can't. I think the C word's probably the worst.
Ted Nugent.
Yeah. It's the N word here.
Yeah, RSC is calling the C word.
Oh really? Oh, what is it? What is it? Druss? What in the UK? Druss? What would it be?
It's like worse in Canada than it is in the UK.
Bollocks. Wouldn't it?
Bollocks,
Druss? Wanker, bollocks. Yeah, knobhead.
I have a lovely response for when someone uses the C word on me.
Oh, I don't. Go on.
I go, oh, that's really sweet. You're saying I've got warmth and depth.
I never use that word. I never use the C word. No, it's awful.
Yeah, I think our worst insults are definitely body part related. But remember, you're kind of asking two questions there because because we have two, they're not merely official languages, they're also popular languages. It's not just we have this one little pocket. There's a lot of people around the country that speak French, and it's culturally very, very different. So they will use, like most of our swear words are body part or body function based. But you'll see like children in Quebec will, if they swing at a ball and miss, and they'll, merde, they'll say shit like it's nothing, right? But if they say, so they're words that are related to parts of sort of Catholic tradition. Esti, the host, the tabernacle is very bad.
Oh yeah, they get slapped by their parents.
What's tabernacle?
The tabernacle.
Tabernacle.
Yeah, but what?
It's the bit behind the altar.
Yeah.
Is that a swear?
Oh my good, tabernacle.
You get a good slapping from Catholic nun for that one.
Yeah.
That's a Catholic.
But you can say shit in front of them all day.
Yeah.
Yeah.
In either language, you can say shit.
What about faggot? Do they like that one?
Well, faggot. I said this before. Faggot in the UK is like a meatball. It's like a.
That's funny.
Yeah.
It's
faggots and beans.
Yeah, and then fag is obviously a cigarette.
So we call those darts.
We had a British kid come to Arizona, an Arizona public school, and his name was Dan, and he had an extremely thick accent, and his sister was really hot, and he would always say, "Could you spare a fag?" And it just killed everybody in the fucking room, or everybody waiting on the bus.
I did a training course in San Francisco, and I did the first day in English, and I did the second day in American. And I said, normally at this point, if I was doing day 2, I'd say it's time for a rest break, guys. But I'm now going to say to all the smokers, does anyone want to come outside and smoke a fag with me?
Yeah. Well, actually, there's a worse expression. There's one place I worked where whenever somebody went around, the smokers, the smokers always kind of like to go out as a group and have their little chit chat behind the building and stuff. And one guy would always go butt break.
We all talk about you, Hog.
Yeah. One guy would say butt break, and one of the other guys would say, anyone want to go outside and suck a fag?
No, nobody. No, suck a fag. Suck a fag is not in the UK. No, nobody says.
Like a
Well, I'm sure the guy did it. The guy was doing it for a reaction.
Yeah, he was doing it for a reaction.
Yeah, butt break. Yeah, butt break wasn't shocking enough. So the other guy had to dial it up a notch.
Yeah, that's not a thing.
You talked about the Pentecostals. I actually have a Pentecostal bus that comes through my apartment complex, and I've told many of the children that I am literally the devil, and a lot of them believe it, and it's kind of funny.
Wow.
I can do things to them.
All right,
and they avoid me and stuff, and I've had some of them run away screaming.
In all seriousness, I do have to go. Although I don't think Thalo actually had a chance. Did you say anything about the Aron Ra versus Mr. Intelligent Design?
Of course. Oh, that was when I was
that's what we were talking about. Yeah.
But we're not. But hold on, we're not reopening it because I really do have to go and get on to work and whatnot. So, but because the major reason I opened the Hangout was because Thalo had sent a message that I assumed she wanted to get something off her chest, and that was 2.5 hours ago. So what were you trying to say?
I could not get in. I think that Edgar is very quantum mechanics, and he and from my understanding of a portion of quantum mechanics is things dip in and out of reality. It's like things are in and out. Well, this is my sort of very
I like it. Go
clearly
limited version of quantum mechanics, and I do believe that Edgar is in and out of reality. He's kind of like within his own reality, and he's in and out, and he's saying things that make sense, and then he's saying things that don't make sense.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know what I mean? Because it's
I like that. Yep, I like that analogy.
I just like to point something out. Of all the crazies we've met on the internet, Edgar has a repeatable experiment with a data set. Yes, he does.
Yeah,
you can draw.
Yeah,
there is a booklet you can get from him that shows how to make the egg dropping box and explains the experiment of dropping the eggs.
No.
Yeah.
Yes, he does. So you two can verify the experiment by repeatability. Nobody else has an experiment like Edgar has.
I didn't know where that idiot savant was an actual term that was used anymore. I don't think it is idiot savant, but it kind of was apt for him.
Yeah. Halfway at least.
Yes, absolutely. But it just resonated that he speaks and he's completely convinced with what he says. He's got utter conviction, conviction, with what he says, that it's an actual thing, which is why quantum mechanics came into my head. It's like half a sentence is real and half a sentence isn't.
So which part's not real, the vowels or the nouns?
We don't know. Pseudo. That is not for us to know. That is only for him to know.
Because we're not a discoverer.
Absolutely.
Discoverer.
That was funny. That was all. Which is real? The vowels of the nouns. Those things aren't even in opposition. That was ATB beacon is happening right here in this hangout. We got to say our goodbyes, folks. Almost an hour past when I
goodbye, folks.
After all the delay and struggle and stuff to get Thalo Blue in here, I'm glad you finally got a chance to say it. And it was worth it. The whole quantum.
I know. It's taken me like 2 hours to say that little piece.
It's a little heady, but it is an apt description of an average conversation.
Let's think about that. Quantum mechanics and Edgar. Is it true?
That's right.
B. He's also A and B.
Yeah. He's everything. He's the alpha to omega.
And everything.
Is Edgar also not?
I had fun. On a very quick last point, I had fun explaining to someone what quantum computing actually was and what a qubit logic gate was, which I won't go into because you guys are still awake.
Wild stuff. Having not received any messages about if someone else is going to open another hangout, I can't share with you where people are going to move on to from here. So why don't you go outside and play? Anyway, thanks for watching. Thanks you guys for joining in on a interesting, lively, multi-topic discussion, as I so often like to have somewhat pointlessly on my channel. Thanks, guys.
And we've got to petition Steve to get Edgar a debate with Ken Hovid.
No, we're not.
Be with me on this.
I
am.